What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new International Comic Crusaders. Woo! First episode of 2021. I'm excited. We have an awesome new topic here. We're going to discuss Ditko, Spider-Man, and Marvel's in the 60s and their whole lineup. And obviously, I have one of my amazing co-hosts right here, the one and only Mr. Dave Elliott. Woo!
Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Lovely to see you. To see you nice.
Yeah, man. We're waiting on our fellow buddy Chris Buse. He likes to be fashionably late. It's just things that he does.
Yeah, no, he's getting he's run out to get a packet of cigarettes and more coffee.
He definitely needs his stove, and any cigarette company is looking for sponsorship. All right.
Or whiskey, for that matter.
Well, there we go. There we go. All right, folks. You heard it, all right? Help us out. All right. So how was your New Year's Eve, man? Did you party the year in?
Like everybody else? Yeah, it was
dreadful.
Forgetful, really. Did I have it already? I didn't know. Christmas. What was that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was just at the crib, chilling with the family. It's the best celebration we could have. Try to pump some music and bring it in as positive as we could. But hey, this is what we gotta do. Get that trash year. Although this started off kind of wild already.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Oh, man. But whatever. We're not here for that nonsense, folks. We're to talk some comic books, man. Some OG classic stuff. Yeah. Now, do we know where our boy Chris is?
Well, providing he knows the right time. But we know what he's going to start talking about. So we can maybe lay some groundwork for that.
Absolutely. Oh, wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Germany, the one and only Chris Buse. What's going on, buddy?
Good day. How are you?
Welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Everything cooking here? Are we already knee deep into the discussion?
Absolutely not. We're about to take the first step into it, and bring an intro. And we're like, all right, what perfect timing, the one and only.
Always.
So the initial topic we're starting with, Chris, is the Steve Ditko's Spider-Man. And you did an amazing job with the wonderful PowerPoint presentation we have here, folks. It's going to be amazing. And obviously the floor is going to be on you. Before we even get started, how are you? And
I'm excellent. But I would also like to say we have excellent program for you guys today. Dave has selected some amazing pictures, but first we will go to Steve Ditko as Al announced, but wait for part 2. Don't turn off after Ditko. We have more stuff to come.
Yeah, definitely. Any viewers that, comment, engage us, you have an opportunity to win a free code for the Empty Man film based on the Boom Studios comic by Colin Bunn. It's a Disney 20th Century Fox joint. So, thank you to Disney for supplying those codes. So engage us, and you may have the opportunity to win. All right. So bet Chris, he lit up his stove. That's it. I think my man is ready.
And ready to go. Let's go.
The floor is yours. And let me bring the initial page, and you just tell me when to start flipping. Isn't that beautiful? Okay.
That's our man. Shy Steve Ditko, Stan used to call him. That's Shy Steve Ditko.
Shy Steve.
And you already get an idea, those two, they wouldn't get along.
Really? Did they not get along in real life?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Ditko scholars, please chime in, send your comments. All other folks are welcome to comment as well, of course. I don't think if they had very, very diametric personalities. I mean, you had outgoing Stan, we all know Stan, and you had Shy Steve Ditko says it all, but he had a lot cooking behind his glasses, in his brain. And we all know he was an Randian scholar. He was into objectivism very heavily. You see it in Spider-Man. For the folks who don't know what that is a philosophy created by a woman called Ayn Rand. Okay. She came originally from Russia. She witnessed the Russian Revolution of 1917 as a child. Her family lost all their money, and she said, okay, I had it. I'm in America now, and everything is faked. You have to identify the real thing. And that's called objectivism. There's no gray, there is only black and white. A thing can be only one thing at a time. And then you have Steve, and then you have Stan, who is the ultimate gray line, who's always, can be this, can be that, can be this. He's the ultimate joker who can be many personalities, and that is not Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko is, this is it, this is black, this is white. And this is early on. Later you will have characters like The Question and Mr. A, who's famously the prototype for Alan Moore's Rorschach. And you get an idea where Steve's mind was at. He wasn't really fully there at that time, but he was really there. And the story, you see here Spider-Man, Kirby had a hand in that, because Kirby had a hand in everything that was Marvel at that time. And Stan said to Jack, I have this idea for a spider-based character. I think it should be a teenager or something. And that was basically Stan creating Spider-Man. And Jack came up with a sketch. I think Dave knows this better than I do. It's based on an old Kirby character, The Fly or something. Dave?
Well, the correct way is Simon and Kirby hit Stan up with an idea for a character called Spider-Man.
Okay.
But he looked nothing like this. He looked almost like Captain America with a gun instead of a shield.
Exactly.
And Stan was like, no, I don't like that. I like the name. And that was when he said, let's have let's have it be a teenager. But it was really like, the drawings that did the drawings that Kirby did was like okay, but it then got passed on to Steve Ditko.
And there's still some discussion about who created the Spider-Man suit. I believe Jack also did a few design proposals, but in the end, what we know is the Steve Ditko Spider-Man. I mean, the thing is always, it's very hard to know how these things come together. I just started the column series on Daredevil. There's also some discussion who created Daredevil, really. The same is here with Spider-Man. But I think at the end of the day, and there was also a lot of discussion later in the 70s between Stan and Steve, where Steve said, well, basically, I created Spider-Man, and I want to have this in writing from you, Stan. And Stan wrote, I consider Steve Ditko the creator of Spider-Man. And Steve Ditko said, well, basically, you're not admitting it. You're saying I'm considering him. That is not saying I am the creator, but I am the creator. So a lot of what you see...
He didn't want any grey lines, did he? He wanted it very much black.
No. Well, Stan was very frustrated by that statement, but you see where they were coming from. I think it's a little bit clearer with Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange was such a nothing character to Stan that he admitted basically many times on record that Steve created him whole cloth. But since Spider-Man was very popular, or became very popular, we can see why Stan was not so eager to say, well, basically that came from the mind of Steve Ditko only. To put you in the minds.
Look at this. A Kirby Ditko cover? What's this?
Yeah, that's a famous one. That's very famous.
Yeah, that was the original cover that Steve Ditko did, that Stanley rejected. And so Jack Kirby then drew the cover that's on the left, and Steve Ditko inked that.
Exactly.
Well, do you think this made a difference in catching kids' eyes at the time?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So you don't like the blue background one?
It's not the case of the blue background. It's too busy and cluttered. The building obscures Spider-Man, whereas the one that Kirby did, the buildings frame Spider-Man. The buildings and the clouds and the logo frame Spider-Man, and there's nothing distracting from his shape or body. So it was, I think that's where it scored.
But what you can already see is the difference between the two styles of Kirby and Ditko, because what you have, Ditko, as Kirby gives you this wide space, this action tableau, whereas Ditko goes for the claustrophobic. Everything is boxed in. Everything is boxed in. This is very much a staple of a style. And
look at Spider-Man, the Kirby Ditko version. I mean, the Kirby version with the webbing on the underarm, whereas the other one doesn't even have that.
But who's to say Steve Ditko just didn't put that in on the inks?
True.
So, we don't know that. And the one thing I will say, in particular in Steve Ditko's defense, as far as who's created him and whether Jack Kirby was involved, is Spider-Man is one of the few characters where if Jack Kirby did draw him, then it was rare to have someone draw that character way better than he did.
No. In case you wondered why I switched the camera off, I was just getting something. I'm back on the camera. Check out this bad boy. This is the biggest book I own.
Oh, nice.
This is the complete Steve Ditko Spider-Man run. Everything that has ever been printed in one book. That's the original omnibus. And
I went that way, bro.
I don't know, but the DHL guy broke his back, I believe.
I'm pretty
It's
sure.
it's really a big book. Look at this.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's gorgeous. It's one of those early ones with the thick paper.
Beautiful. Look at that.
This is really amazing. I mean, it goes for $500 or something right now.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah. I think my table is going to break down now. So anyway, what we still have here is the first issue of Spider-Man, and what is really interesting about this first issue is, as you can tell, it came in amazing fantasy, and there's a story behind this as well. Because if you go looking for amazing fantasy, it doesn't really exist only in the early issues, and then it was called Adult Amazing Fantasy, one of the few missteps Stan made along the way, because he said, oh, adult sounds more sophisticated. And as I wrote in one of my columns, the kids were really ashamed to go with a magazine that said Adult Amazing Fantasies to the checkout. And so the book suffered tremendously for it and got already cancelled. This was the last issue. And Stan put Spider-Man in there. And as they say, the rest is history. But let's go to the issue. And I think this is what makes it so different. Look at this design of this page. Isn't it amazing? I mean, you have this is the hero, and he's in the corner. This is completely unusual.
Yeah.
And you already get an idea, okay, he will bulk up, he will be the super guy, but this is not how the story goes. The story goes completely in a different direction, because Peter Parker will remain this outsider character, which is very unusual. And you get this idea, and this is of course, I'm moving along a little bit quicker here, this is the last page. We all know the story, we have seen it in many movies, I don't need to explain it. If you go to the last page, this is one of the most misquoted quotes in comic history, because it's not what you think it is, you need to read it very carefully. The wit with great powers and so forth. It's very different to what you think it is. It's very, very good actually. If Stan wrote the copy, and I believe he has, it's a very good copy. It's very, very good. It's a very good closing. It's a very clever story. It's very well done. And it sets up Spider-Man. You see also, what's interesting is how his eyes changed. Ditko has Spider-Man immersed through the mask. The eyes changed. They get bigger, they get smaller. This is unreal, of course, but he does this very cleverly. I think Alan Moore picked up on that from Watchmen for the Rorschach mask. So Dave Gibbons did at least. And what you also see here is, I mean, when we talk about Watchmen, this is the 9. This is now not 9, but mostly it's 9-color grid Ditko uses throughout. It's this boxed-in world. It's a very hermetic world Spider-Man lives in. It's very much not the world of Kirby. It's very much not the superhero world. It's not big. It's small. Dave, jump in.
No, that was it was. All I was thinking, like in my head right now, was the fact that Steve Ditko, I felt, very much laid the groundwork for what is as close to reality as possible in the Marvel Universe, like what it's like to be at school, a teenager, whereas Jack Kirby represented the big stuff. And it was if you read Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, they complemented each other very well, but you actually were seeing two ends of the spectrum as far as the Marvel Universe was concerned.
It's also interesting that this is the world of the early 60s. When we get to the other Marvel stuff later on, when the moment Roy Thomas comes in, we get this gleam of the later 60s, when the Avengers, they all drive fast cars, they all look very attractive, they all wear designer clothes. You have the gleam of the later 60s coming in later. This is still the early 60s. And in case you were wondering how this is a sales hit, this is not a sales hit. This is the beginning. It took them 5-6 years to get Spider-Man into the top 20. But once they were in the top 20, Spider-Man was the best-selling book for Marvel. In '66, it was number 14 on the sales charts. So Spider-Man was getting there. Fantastic Four was 19. So Marvel was getting there, but this is still 5 years away from that. or 4 years, in fact, as a matter of fact. So this is how it ends. Spider-Man learns that with great powers must come great responsibilities. And this sets the tone for the series very nicely, because from now on, we all know this. Peter has his aunts to support. She's very old. They have no money. This is the law of the land. This is very unusual. He's not a rich playboy son.
Okay, gotcha.
And this is the scene we all know when we talk about how great the second Spider-Man movie is, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. The second one is Dr. Octopus. This is the scene how Ditko envisioned it. This is the birth of Dr. Octopus. And a lot of people say, well, Raimi's scene with Dr. Octopus in the hospital, that's very creepy. This is very creepy for the 60s. You have the scientist guy who suddenly is in an atomic explosion. These arms he uses for experimentation, he controls with devices on his chest. They're suddenly part of his body, and he can control them mentally. And you see how his face changes in the second but last panel. He's going crazy with power. This is an amazing page, by the way.
It is.
Yeah,
I love that this first red panel right here. It's very hopeless at the same time, also.
Yeah.
well, it's it's a blast. It's an explosion, and
Wonderfully done.
you've got that plus the red. The red continues into the second panel as they're coming in to pull him out of the flames. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's beautiful design.
It's
beautifully designed.
simply colored, very effectively.
And talk about awesome design here. Look at this.
And look what we have here. This is the third issue of Spider-Man. I mean, Amazing Fantasy 15 is not the first issue, naturally. So this is book number 3. And look what happens here. The hero gets defeated, and he gets defeated in a very easy way. And this tells you how awesome Dr. Octopus is as a villain. And we know it from till today. He is the main Spider-Man antagonist. You can argue with Green Goblin, but I think it's more Dr. Octopus, because he's a dark reflection of Peter. And then Slott did this very cleverly in his run when he had them switch personalities and bodies. It's quite interesting. Dr. Octopus is an older Peter Parker.
Yeah. And I find this hilarious. I mean, he put him with a pimp slap. Like, get out of here! Like, yo, you're nothing. You are a fly. Look at this, and just chuck him out the window.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
wow, that's a badass villain right there. I mean, but of course, it only happened once, right?
Yeah, well, basically, but I didn't pick up the next page, I believe, but this is the moment where Peter says, well, basically, I'm defeated now, and I can't be Spider-Man anymore. There's a little bit of that Stan melodrama there. Oh, I lost the battle, so my career's over. But still, it's interesting where you see, okay, he's just a kid, and you sense this. He got bitch slapped. And he's now basically dejected and say, well, basically, this is like high school. What's going on? I have all these powers, and there's this grown-up. He's pushing me around like my schoolmates do. It's quite interesting. It goes very deep.
Yeah, Doc Octopus was Spider-Man's Flash Gordon, not Flash Gordon,
Ming.
but Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
Flash Thompson.
Yeah, very much so.
And talk about Wild Doctors. I love this intro right here.
I mean, it's also very interesting when you talk about the Steve Ditko run. If you go through the issues, what they do? They introduce Dr. Octopus, they introduce the Lizard, Kraven, and the list goes on. And then Ditko leaves the book with. Go back, please. Ditko leaves the book, and what happens? There are no new villains that are interesting. You got the Shocker, sure. You got the Kingpin, but they didn't know how to use it properly. There are no new villains.
Really?
All the villains are created by Steve Ditko.
Interesting.
Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar.
And
a lot
then
of
look
Marvel books. Yeah.
And look at this amazing design. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, and also you also notice it still has the darker costume. It's actually needs to be a little bit more purple. It's a reprint, because in the first issues his costume was not really blue. It was purplish. The blue was darker.
It's
but
interesting.
it's also.
I was going to say it's interesting on the splash page that, like, so this was where the splash page was almost like a double cover. So you had the cover, opened it up, big splash page that's, again, telling you about the story. But here, which we're starting to see more of from Marvel at this point, is a 21-page Spider-Man super epic. So it wasn't 2 stories in one issue, as we saw in Amazing Fantasy in issue 1.
We also saw this in the first issue also.
Yeah, but it's that whole, they really are pushing it. It's like, this is an entire 21-page epic.
Yeah, but those 21 pages will take you a half hour to read, as opposed to 24 pages nowadays. It'll take you 5.
Well, people need 21 pages these days to just do a recap of the last couple of issues.
Oh shit, man, true.
Yeah. Then when we get to the next page, what's interesting is it's also an interesting page. It's the girlfriend, because meanwhile Peter Parker has a girlfriend. He's selling the pictures. He takes secretly to the Daily Bugle, which wasn't called Daily Bugle in the first couple of issues. But anyway, we all know how the story goes. He's selling the pics, and this is Betty Brant. She's the secretary of Jonah Jameson. And what's so interesting about this thing is, they try to make her look more adult, and they switched it back very quickly, because when you see her hairdo here now, this is only for 1 or 2 issues. And I'm sure it got some letters from the readers. I haven't checked them, but it's very interesting. She's all of a sudden much older looking. And what's also interesting, what many people do not know, because I remember reading this in one of the letter pages, there were kids who wrote in and said, this Ditko guy, he doesn't really know how to draw. He doesn't know how to draw women. What's interesting is that Ditko at that time, he shared in the studio with Eric Stanton, the famous fetish artist. And there are many fetish drawings of Eric Stanton that are inked by Steve Ditko. If you go online, you will see a lot of Steve Ditko art you have never seen in your life. I thought about posting them on Twitter and said, maybe not, because you always have those sensitive people who say, I don't like to see girls in underwear. And but you can do a little research for yourself.
Yeah,
and see some Steve.
I nearly included them in mine. But then I realized that I had way too many images. So.
But what you also see here is this is the moment the girl hates the secret identity of Peter, because her brother dies and she blames Spider-Man for it. As you can tell from the silhouette, it's a Dr. Octopus story. I mean, it says it in the headline. It's basically Dr. Octopus forces her brother to go back on his crooked ways, his gambling debts, la-di-da-di-da. But in the end, the brother dies, and it's Spider-Man's fault, which it isn't. But it's interesting. It's a very dynamic page. It doesn't occur in the book, but it's a very interesting story that sums up the new dynamic we have here now.
Yeah. I love this page. I wish they'd do more comic books pages like this. Splash. Yes. I mean, and look at this at the bottom. None but Stan Lee could have written this epic tale. None but Steve Ditko could have drawn such gripping scenes, and then let it by.
I wonder who wrote that.
The letterer gets nothing. He just gets lettered by.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, all right.
Exactly. The letter doesn't mean anything in this world back then. And here we get to the first issue of the first appearance of the Green Goblin. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 14. Also very interesting character design. Notice how different his broomstick is originally. He had it looked more like a witch's broom. It's very interesting. It's a very, very interesting character design. And also very interesting character. We'll see throughout, of course, naturally, but you can tell this is the Steve Ditko concept. I mean, Ditko came from horror stories before we came to Marvel. He was doing a lot of horror books for Charlton. This is a very nightmarish character, and we all know the story about the original mask that was designed for William Dafoe for the Spider-Man movie. It is still online. You can see it. It's much closer to this.
Yeah.
But the studio said, no, this is too scary for kids. Make it look like a Power Ranger.
I find it funny here because thank goodness they changed the style of the glide, to the glider for the Green Goblin. Because I mean, imagine him writing that. He must have some powerful thighs not to fall off that.
That's true. That's true. That's an interesting page, and nevertheless, it's very interesting. And he's also you guess it from very early on, because he is interesting for. I think it's on the next page. Can we go to the next page, please? No, let's go to that later. But what you see here is also a lot of the character dynamics. You see the 9-panel grid, and you see Peter's ordinary life. He's shaving. He can't use his hands. You can see it here because Craven put something in him. His hands are shaking. He needs to hide this from Aunt May. That's why he has his hands behind his back. So he's affected in his private life by a superhero thing. And you see how boxed in he is. He's trapped in many ways. You have the villain scheming, and at the end you have basically I think it's Ned Leeds who's walking in. So you basically have two things that work against him. You have the villains at the top, and down there's Ned Leeds making a play for his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
And this is also what they like to do. They like to put their new characters into new books. Daredevil was a new character, so they put them in Spider-Man. And of course, the heroes needed to fight. I mean, you saw that in the first Avenger movie. Josh Whedon did really a very original thing there. It's basically they always fight it first, and this is the Ringmaster, and Spider-Man is under his control. So they both need to fight. We know how this goes. They team up in the end. They bring down the circus. But it's interesting. It's also an interesting dynamic. And also, if you look at this, I think Ditko would also have made a great Daredevil artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they wound up reusing this costume years later. And remember D-Man from the Captain America, the Green Wall?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to remember that. Thank you very much.
It's called the 90s. Jesus. Okay. So let's carry on. Let's go to the next one.
Oh, here we go.
And this is the page I was looking for. Look at this at the bottom. You don't know who the Green Goblin is. And I'm not sure if everybody knows the story. Some say this was the reason why Steve Ditko left the book. I would say it's one of the reasons, because Stan and he had a disagreement about who the Green Goblin should be. And Stan always said, Stan always said he should be somebody of the supporting cast. And they had already introduced. At that point, they hadn't introduced any further supporting cast yet, but Stan said, well, basically, keep it a secret, and in the end, we will introduce new characters, and then he's one of those new characters. Maybe he's the father of a new friend of Peter's. And Ditko said, well, what are the chances? And he said, no, he needs to be nobody. We will never show his face. He's just a guy from the face of the crowd. And Stan said, no, this doesn't make any sense from a narrative point of view. We need to have dramatic feel to it. He needs to be somebody who knows Peter. La-di-da-di-da. And Ditko said, no, I don't want this. And if you go from here to all his characters, he later, not all the characters, but the characters we remember him for. Think about the Question. It's a faceless mask. It's a featureless mask. Mr. A. The idea that it could be anybody is very, very strong in Ditko. I mean, he took that from Ayn Rand. I talked about Ayn Rand a little bit. And it's this idea, it can be everybody. Everybody can be opponent. And it's also a very dramatically designed page here. It's Peter remembering, and you get this flashback, and you see how he walks off. He's supposed to be a quote-unquote nobody. He can be anybody. It's a very, very interesting design here.
It is wonderful.
And you also see the new glider here.
Yeah, finally, yeah, man. I mean, he still needs strong legs, but at least like he got support. You know, he doesn't got to hold on for his dear life with his legs. Because you could tell over here, at least in this panel, he did have strong thighs.
But it also looks much more menacing.
Oh, absolutely, much more scary. I mean, I'd run for my life see something like that.
Yeah, that's it. And you also see how well Ditko knew how to draw action. It's very different to how Kirby did it, but it's very fluid. It's very dynamic. It's you get a sense how this character moves.
I love it. Exactly. You see this here. You actually see the motion, feel the motion, motion. I mean, well done. There's a current artist, I think Michael Janin. I don't know. I'm sorry, probably butchering your name, but he does movement like this in his comics. Really wonderfully done. I guess most likely inspired by the great Ditko here.
Well, it was Ditko. I think it was Ditko that I first noticed outside of, I think, where you saw in a single panel the hero in 5 different poses. He goes as he flips over. You'd see it a lot then in Daredevil. Daredevil would then use it probably more than anybody. And I think the only time I can think of seeing it maybe elsewhere was the Flash, but obviously because he's running super fast. But here, where you see in one panel several movements, you see that he's in those 2 panels you can see he's covered he's covered half the city.
Yeah.
And just here too, this is you notice the flow going from this panel to that. So the subject of this motion leads to this.
Storytelling.
You know what I mean? Yeah, man. Visual storytelling.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's very, very good. It's very fluent. It's amazing. It's very well done.
Yeah.
Oh man.
This is an interesting. This is an interesting issue. The Spider-Man 21. It's an interesting issue because we can't see it now. But there's this. If you read this the caption box, the first one, it's basically Stan saying, well, basically this is a very unusual Spider-Man story. It's a very unusual comic book story. We'll tell you why it's unusual at the end of the book. And what he does here, and I think this is very, very Ditko, is Aunt May is in hospital again because she is very frail, and Peter has to take care of a lot of things. And when the Sandman comes by, he runs from him as Spider-Man because he doesn't want to fight. He's not fighting him. The Human Torch comes by, and then, oh, Spider-Man is a coward. That's what you see here. But at the end, it's a very important lesson for kids to learn. In the end, Stan says, well, basically, it's the first comic book issue we put out where the hero doesn't fight. And it's a very interesting story where basically kids learn here how to solve their problems without fighting. It's quite an interesting statement for a superhero book at that time. It says, well, basically Spider-Man has nothing to win if he fights against the Sandman because the Human Torch is there. He will handle the threat. Spider-Man has his own issues as Peter Parker, and they are more important than making a showy fight with the Sandman.
Gotcha. And J. Jonah looking very Hillary right here with that mustache going on there.
Don't say that. Don't say that too loud. But I think it's quite also interesting this idea that he's hunted by fake news. It's very interesting. It's haunted by fake news. I mean, it's always the spin of Jonah Jameson. This is also very Enranian. It's always the big guy who wants to bring down the individualist, the guy who makes a difference. And this is a very, very good. Gives you a good idea how media works early on. This could be Twitter. I mean, this could be Twitter.
Oh yeah. No, it's interesting. As a total side note, looking at Steve Ditko's drawing of J. Jonah Jameson there, you can see very much the influence that Steve Ditko had on Frank Miller. When you look at, particularly in Dark Knight, some of the expressions of people, particularly when they were like media types and anybody like that. You can totally see where he was influenced by Steve Ditko early on.
Oh, that's a very good point. You see the angular face. That's very Miller.
Yeah,
it's very good. It's very interesting. So it's an interesting story. This is also one of my favorite ones from my childhood because it's a Goblin again teaming up with a one-off villain. But it's interesting. It's a powerful cover because it tells you, oh, look here, Spider-Man is defeated. You have to buy this book. And Dave just mentioned the influence on Miller. Look at this. What does this remind you of? This is the Matrix. This is Neo going up against the Mr. Smith agents. This is very much an influence on the Wachowskis. This is very much the Matrix.
Gangsters, boy. I wonder if these faces that he drew were reflective of anyone, or these were just random drawings.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there were random drawings for Steve.
Yeah.
He was not one of those dudes.
He wasn't. He, at least I don't believe he was. But there's nothing to back up the idea that he was someone who would use tons of reference and like, oh, I've got to make this. You know, I think it was just craft. I think when you're someone, you know, it's craft. It's the same way Jack had it too. You know, it wasn't. He would surround, you know, those. Even if it was just bystanders, they wouldn't just look like they were exactly. They were all cloned. Like, you know, when you talk about it, this being the Matrix, if it was actually close to the Matrix, every single figure there would look exactly the same and would like maybe have the hair colored differently. But they don't.
Right. But it's the same idea. You have.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah, I know what you're getting to. But I was just saying that just on a drawing aspect, you know. John Basine was another one, you know, we'll talk about him later, but it's, you know, they didn't just like, it wasn't just about, you know, everyone looks the same and just color their hair differently or make them bald. You know, that seems, cool, man.
Okay, let's go here. I mean, if you ask any any fan of the early issues of Spider-Man and what Spider-Man fan is not a fan of the early issues, the three-parter that we have here, which starts here, 31 to 33, is the hands down some of the best comic books you will ever read. I mean, it's still in the top 10 of the best comic book arcs ever written, I believe. This issue alone is amazing. I took a lot of pages from this issue. It starts with this cover. I mean, it's just an amazing cover. We start with look at this. This is so dynamic. This is so unusual also for a comic book cover. If you think this is 63, right 63, 64, the way this is laid out is absolutely amazing. It completely stands out on the stands. I mean, this is the time when Spider-Man was not selling so much that he would make it into the sales charts, high in the sales charts, but this is also distribution. But this
looks so James Bondish. That's what it looks to me. Like he goes James Bond over here. You know, gangster. You got foot soldiers. He's fine. He's trapped. He's on the water. What's going on? This is not my Spidey.
But the irony is, this is not the strongest part of the book. It's quite interesting. We start, when we go to the first page, or one of the first pages here, we start with an action sequence, like a Hollywood blockbuster. There's these guys who steal radioactive material, but what they steal is a substance Aunt May's doctor needs to keep her alive. So Spider-Man suddenly has a personal stake in this. It's not just, oh, I need to keep this away from the bad guys. No, the doctor of my aunt needs the substance to make a drug for Aunt May. She's seriously ill now. And so suddenly this gets a whole new meaning. He doesn't know it yet, but this is where it's going. At the same time, in the issue before, Peter Parker graduated from high school, which is another point of contention between Stan and Steve, because Stan wanted Peter to grow up, go to college, and we see it here. But Steve said, no, he needs to stay in high school. And if you see how the Marvel-Man movies, new Marvel movies work, the new Sony Spider-Man movies work, Kevin Feige seems to be very interested in going the Ditko route, keeping him in high school, not just for one movie, keep him longer in high school. This seems to be the route Kevin Feige is going with those movies. This is what Ditko had in mind.
Yeah, I think when you were talking earlier about like one of the reasons why Steve left Spider-Man, and I think there are several, but I think I think it seems the one I've heard, particularly from people who've known Steve, was probably the biggest one was actually keeping Peter at high school. Again, it was reflective of comics at the time. Like the most popular comics were still the Archie comics, and so why not have a superhero Archie still? Still having the same problems, having problems with trying to reach out to girls. And the more I think Stan wanted Peter to have girlfriends that would actually be successful, I think the more like Steve was like, resistance. It's about the eternal chase. And, I think, in the case with the Green Goblin, it's sometimes when once you've made that final reveal, you kind of you're almost at the point where you need to like move on to another character now.
It's also interesting that they politically don't match up, because you also have this. Sometimes you have these demonstrations going on in the background, and you had Steve, who was always like, "Oh, Spider-Man wouldn't like that. Spider-Man is a very, very straight character." And Steve said, "No, let's give Spider-Man a funny quip." They go on with the demonstration. It's cool. And you have swinging Stan here already, and you have a very conservative Steve, and it's also reflected in the art. It's reflected in the overall storytelling.
But it's also, I mean, again, being, if we're honest, by that point, Steve was writing and drawing Spider-Man.
Definitely.
Steve was probably editing dialogue. So when it comes to having images of Peter at a protest, I think that's Steve drawing that, but maybe having Peter just not join in was more of Steve's personality of going, yeah, no, Peter wouldn't join in. He wouldn't draw anything. He wouldn't do anything to draw attention to himself.
Yeah, that's also true. I mean, but we know this from the way their lives went. Steve was certainly more conservative in his mindset. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. And but you have the clash when you have a guy like Stan because Stan was riding the waves. He was always, oh, I can be this, I can be that. He was never really interested in polarizing anybody. This is why Marvel became so successful. He never said, well, this is my political opinion, and he should cater to these kinds of readers. He never did that. He always sat on the fence.
Oh yeah,
and that was not Steve Ditko.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Stan went where he could make a dollar.
Absolutely.
I mean, as we know, it's like, politics was there, and I think that Stan was actually more conservative than you might think.
Also true.
In fact, maybe if you actually take into account Jack Kirby, I would say that while Steve and Jack definitely got on and communicated well with each other, I would say their politics were polar opposites. And Stan, if anything, was in the middle.
Yeah, that's also a good assessment. But you're totally right. Stan was conservative as far as his upbringing, his gender roles were concerned. You only need to look at the Invisible Woman. I mean, he was interested in making her a popular character, but it starts very much like his idea of a woman who was invisible, basically. She only needs to look pretty.
Yeah. Any film of the time. I mean, you look at the film Fantastic Voyage pops into my head. And let's be honest, all I remember about that was, it's a spaceship that goes in the bloodstream that Raquel Welch was in.
Exactly, in a white cat suit.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing here is also when you look at these how these people worked. Stan would bring in the pages to the Marvel offices, but this was not where in Manhattan. But this was not where Stan lived. Stan lived on Long Island. Stan lived where the successful people lived. Yeah. And because he was making more money than Steve and Jack together. And so they already have a clash there as well. I don't think that Steve was envious of Stan's money, but he wanted more of the credit as well. And as Dave already pointed out, I mean, it always says written by Stan Lee, which is not right.
I don't think that there was clear accounting at Marvel, because I think that one of the things that early on was so that they could get this all going. Pretty much, even those Jack and Steve were doing the heavy lifting on story and writing, Stan was taking not only the credit but payment for that.
Exactly, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah,
and I would say that as the books got more successful and he could finally pay himself to write it, he kept everything the way it was. So it wasn't like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko got a pay rise. In fact, actually, there was a point where I believe Jack was offered because he was doing so many pages, they wanted to cut his page rate. And what he did was, if you look at the Fantastic Four, I think there's a great example. I think it's like 87, 88. They do an issue with the Mole Man, and Jack tells the entire story in 3 or 4 panels a page. And there's splash pages.
That's right.
And that was, I think that was the end of him going like, okay, if you look at from that point on, all of the issues of FFs were all like literally one and dones or 2-parters. No more major new characters were introduced.
Exactly. And he was also withholding a lot of ideas from Stan at that point.
Well, I think initially he wasn't. I think initially he showed Stan, because I think I think that Jack, if Jack Kirby had been the visionary, and again, we're talking about Steve at the moment, but I'll just say that if Jack had been the visionary for Marvel would be a very, very different place today.
Definitely. Okay,
we'll do a what if one day and talk about that.
That would be very interesting. Let's do that. Okay, let's go to the next page, please. And here we have the situation. The stakes are introduced, and this is still early on in the story. It's still Spider-Man 31. Aunt May doesn't want to tell him how sick she is because it's his first big day at college. All seems to be going well for Pete. You see here he's in the enrollment office. Everything is just working fine. He gets his curriculum. Flash Thompson is also there, but it doesn't really matter. This is college. This is a new thing. And it's only then that Peter learns, oh, Aunt May is very ill, and he has to make more photos of Spider-Man to earn more money. And still he learns that he needs that potion that was stolen earlier on in the issue. So this is a very well-constructed book, because if you go to the next page, what happens is here he learns the truth about Aunt May's real illness, how ill she is, what he needs to get her well, what the doctor needs. Very dramatic scene, very well done. What this leads to, and this is quite amazing, if you go to the next page, we get a new supporting cast. And we get Gwen Stacy. This is the first picture of Gwen Stacy. And those people who say Steve Ditko doesn't know how to draw women, well, they have not read any comic books by Steve Ditko, apparently. This is of course the situation here. What is interesting, and this is very, very well constructed modern storytelling. Of course, there's Harry Osborn. Harry is a little bit the smarmy rich kid who goes with where the flow is, and Flash Thompson already is the big man on campus. He puts Harry on his side. He wants Gwen. We see what's going on here. And now comes the twist, and it's so very interesting. We go to the next page. They don't like Pete. Why don't they like Pete? Because Pete is wrapped up on his own mind, because he knows how ill Aunt May is. He needs to find a way to earn more money. So he has no time to hang out with these his new peers at college. You see how dramatic this is, how boxed in he is. He's with his books, he thinks about Aunt May. Meanwhile, his new classmates, they think he is standoffish. He seems arrogant. He is in college because he got a scholarship. They think he's arrogant. So we see where this is going. But we also see, when we look at the third panel in the top tier, what is interesting is that Gwen is interested in him. And what is even more interesting, and how believable this is when we go to the next page, is the irony why he has a shot at her is simply because he is not interested in her. Yeah. He doesn't pay her any notice. And this is quite interesting. This is very, very well done. This is very well constructed. This is such an amazing story. It's so well built. This is incredible. You do this in a comic book in 20 pages. This is, if you build characters, if you set up characters, this is the way to do it. It's so well done. We go to the next page. This is the same thing here. We still continue to the next page. Oh no, go back. I didn't pick that page. It's basically, but you get the idea. It's really this idea. Okay, there's this guy. I think he's quite handsome, because Steve Ditko also began to make Peter more handsome. It's not just Romita, it's going this direction, but he's not interested, he's standoffish, and this is where we go with this. This is very interesting. It's very well constructed. And then when we go to the next page, we come to probably the most famous Spider-Man issue in the early run, Amazing Spider-Man number 33. And look at this, how amazing this is done. And this was ripped up for the first Sony Spider-Man movie, because when we also have this, when the Tom Holland Spider-Man in the end is trapped under all this masonry on this equipment. This is basically paying homage to this. And I posted this a while back, and young readers said, well, oh, so this is where the movie got it from. Yes, they all got it from Steve Ditko. They're paying homage to Steve Ditko here. This is where it was. And this is such an amazing issue, because the issue before 32 ended on a cliffhanger. Peter Parker was buried, or Spider-Man was buried under this masonry, this heavy equipment, and water coming in. So we have a ticking time bomb. He's going to drown, or he's going to die from the weight of all this metal here. And this is, okay, the first page is the splash page. The hero frees himself. No, this is not how the book starts. If you go to the next page, Ditko goes on pages for pages in a superhero book with the hero pinned down under all this wreckage. And he tries to lift up this heavy load. He sees his Uncle Ben, he sees his Aunt May gravely ill, and still he can't lift this bloody thing off him. It's so well done.
Yeah, the drama all in there, intense. A man lost on his thoughts, and he's trying. What a challenge.
Yes. And you go to the next page, and still he hasn't done it. He tries and he tries, and he can't do it. He starts going for this, and this is going on page for page. This is, I believe, it's 4 pages in the book, And then finally, little by little, he moves this up. And there's a wonderful quote by Alan Moore, or wonderful, if you go in, there's a very great documentary on YouTube. Go look for and find it. It's called In Search of Steve Ditko. Excellent Steve Ditko documentary. And Alan Moore is in this, and he talks about this particular scene. And he says, well, basically, it's one of the best sequences in comic books, except for the dialogue by Stephen Stanley.
Oh, man.
It's basically what it is. And I mean, you don't need the dialogue. And this is what Alan Moore means here. It's just, you see what's going on. You don't need the dialogue.
If you actually read the entire sequence from the very first page to the pages that will follow this, this isn't the beginning you'll notice that on every page there's one panel less than the previous page, and it basically, I believe the next page has two panels. It's a splash page.
Yes. And this is yes, you're right. It's closing in. We get wider panels, and because Steve is building the tension, that's basically what he does. And it's such an hero shot.
Yeah, and again, that's storytelling, and it came from him.
I could say for modern readers, look at the Superman versus Doomsday fight in that iconic issue. The panels kept going, until the final punch.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the great hero we have in Superman who can do everything, because we're still talking the 60s here. This is the hero who's really have to work hard for it. This is Spider-Man is a working class hero, because Steve Ditko was a working class artist, and it's reflected here. There is no glamour. This is just basically, I have to work for everything I get in life. It's quite an amazing concept, and it's a very good story arc.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that, in many respects, how you continue on from like a moment like this, where a character has displayed a power or a level of power they've never had before, but it's extreme circumstances. What tends to happen is that now becomes the go-to level of his strength. And so within a few issues, he's doing stuff like that every issue. And I think after Steve leaves, what we kept seeing was, Spider-Man just picking up cars and throwing cars around without seeming effort. And it's this we've never seen this before, or since really in Spider-Man. He's never been brought to this level again.
It's also interesting. What I also find interesting, I mean, this is why I haven't even bothered to watch the second Sony Spider-Man movie. And what Sam Raimi actually captured quite well in the first two movies he did, the first two Spider-Man movies he did. What is missing from the new incarnation of Spider-Man is where's the drama? Where's the working class element? Where's the I need money? Where's the I have an aunt, a sick aunt? Where's all the interpersonal conflict? Everything is creepy, and everything is easy, except for the villain, of course. He needs to be the bad guy, but everything else is very much not Steve Ditko. And what makes Spider-Man so interesting here is that it is exactly that. He always has a weight on his shoulders. And once we get to the Romita run, as good as it is, let's quote Alan Moore. He said, "I kind of lost interest." Yeah. I mean, I like the Romita run, but you can see how certain people like Alan Moore would lose interest, because I think they've always said it. It's like Archie, Betty, and Veronica. He has all these hot chicks around him. It's the swinging 60s. Everything gets very, very pretty, but there's a lot of interpersonal drama missing. There's a lot of conflict missing from that book. It's only once we get to Jerry Conway that this comes back.
Yeah,
I think you made I think you nailed it when you said earlier. You looked at the Rogues Gallery of Spider-Man, and that creation of those characters pretty much ends when he leaves. And so if again, I'll just go back to, if you want to see where the creativity behind Spider-Man was. It left when Steve Ditko went. So we know who his creator was.
Exactly, because after that it becomes just a shuffle. It's bring the Lizard back, bring the Kraven back, bring this back. It's nothing new. I said, well, we basically get Shocker now, then you got the Prowler. interesting character later on, but even Bendis knew, or Bendis, not even Bendis, but Bendis knew what to do with the Prowler in his Ultimate Spider-Man. But very little did Stan do with him.
Yeah, I think, you see, Bendis benefited from, he could look over hundreds of issues and he could see where it went and goes like, I see where they went wrong here. See when I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that. Because it hadn't been created at that point, and now he can go back and recreate it.
That's
and
very
with
true.
that,
That's very true.
So it's like once you've got that big pool of history to pull on, it's so much easier. Not to knock what he did, but it's a lot easier.
But try to chest it like that. I mean, to pick through it. I mean, that's what Jeff Johns does too in his writing. Right? He looks at the history of and brings in some of the most craziest stuff you've seen. Those are great writers. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
but I would also contend that when you look at the this run we just discussed, 31 to 33, this is really where Ditko was at its peak on the book, and it's quite interesting to think about what would have come from that, because this is really the essence of an excellent Spider-Man book. Everything else leading up to this, there was a Green Goblin, everything was quite interesting, but this is really where we see, okay, had Steve Ditko stayed on the book, would we have gotten more of this? I'm sure of this.
Yeah. I think it's a tough one. Like, what else did Steve have to bring to it? Like, where if you'd left it in his hands, if he'd said, like, if Stan had backed away and said, look, do you know what, we're going to follow it. We'll go your way. Again, how many issues would it have gone? How would Steve have got bored?
That's also true. And let's be honest. I mean, the sales success came when Romita was on the book. I mean, this was certainly not for everybody. You can also go through to the letters pages, and you see there's plenty of. And I can show you some letters from because also they reprint, thankfully, the letters here in the omnibus. There's lots of readers who say, well, I like that Spider-Man character, but get rid of this artist. He doesn't know how to draw. I mean, this was very unusual. This is very unusual.
But you're always going to have that. I remember as a kid when, I'm reading my comics, and particularly like on when Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief, there seemed to be this, like, there was a brief spot where occasionally Marvel would fall in, like they'd have fill-ins where it'd be like the issue wasn't delivered on time, so we had a little framing sequence and a flash, reprint. Jim got it to that point where it was like, no issue's going to be late. So if you're not going to be able to deliver, I'm going to have someone else draw the issue. And if that meant hiring two guys who could draw it in a weekend, who was completely different from your style, so be it. And I think there's that thing of, when it comes down to, like, everyone's got their idea of what their top 10 artists are, top 5 artists, things like that. And you look back and you go, like, for me, Steve Ditko, his run, like, told it all. Like, there wasn't much more to be told by anybody else. So I haven't really, like, I don't have that much beyond that. But it's not to knock them. And I think it's the same for, a lot of other titles. Steve Ditko, it was his character, his voice, and
absolutely,
yeah. So
excellent. This is great, man. This has been a fantastic first segment here, man. Chris, thank you for those wonderful that picture contribution and
we have some amazing stuff still lined up here.
Absolutely. And before we get into that next step, all right, we're actually going to show you a trailer from Dave's joint right here, the A1 Anthology trailer. Enjoy, people.
Here you go. Excellent work, sir.
I want to buy that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure. Send me one.
Everybody,
Excellent,
now
sir.
everybody go to Comicsology
I will.
and pick that up immediately.
Thank you.
Immediately, Conyo. All right, folks.
Excellent work here.
Yeah, excellent. You want to talk about some excellence as well? You saw that last segment with Chris covering the Steve Ditko Spider-Man, and obviously there's a lot more to tell. And I'm sure we're going to read that in future columns, get more into that gossip and tension that was on those Marvel offices back then. But now we're going to give the floor to one and only Mr. Dave Elliott. He's going to present us something really cool here, because there's a particular the amount of titles that Marvel was putting out during this era, and for me, it's something that just before I'm gonna put it out there before you start. It kind of reminds me of the Valiant, where they wanted to start. They started small, and I remember asking one of the publishers at the time about it, like, why did you want to start small? That wasn't really the intention, but we figured if they could afford the whole universe at once, they could afford it with readers. Why not? So, that was a great answer. But hopefully for me, let's find out. Was that the intent here with Marvel, or was it what it was?
No, but I think Dave goes into this. I know that was not the reason, but Dave goes into this, I think.
That's what we want to learn here. Floor is yours, brother.
All right. Well, I mean, a lot of the images you're going to see is like I've put together some presentations on. That's just going to skip past basically the who I consider the main founding fathers. The first few slides are kind of what Marvel was doing up until Fantastic Four. And again, you look at the time, like, any of these titles has anywhere from 3 or even 4 stories in. And usually Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko were in each one. It was anthologies. People pick them up, read them. My man Fing Fang Foon just there. And again, done in ones. You pick up the comic, you read it. Wow, that was cool. You swapped it to your friend, like, hey, you give me Journey into Mystery, I'll give you Strange Tales, I'll give you Tales to Astonish. And you just swap them around, and they're just good, fun stories. Enjoyable, good comics escapism. And it was this was the pretty much Marvel doing before the Marvel Universe. And again, there's only so much you can do with this. And I think the audience was kind of drying up, needing something else. When, it was Stan had to either, do something new, innovative, or it was, it might even have been curtains for Stan might have been out on a job. And
what are they talking about here? Save me from the weed.
Yeah, save me from the weed, please. But yeah, I mean, and it's when you see these, you kind of get a hint of the creativity. Like, I think a lot of people don't take, these days we're used to a lot of creators, they come up with an idea and then they get like 12 issues to tell that story. These are stories where literally like Stan, Steve, Don Heck would come in with, or Bob Powell would come in with a completed 6-8 page story, all done. Like, you have to tell everything in that many pages, which is a big difference from what we're used to today. But this is what Marvel was doing. This was their sort of bread and butter, and they were getting by with. They still had Millie the Model, things like that, Night Nurse, a little variety, the Westerns, Two Gun Kid. But they realized that they needed to, do something that was actually going to keep the doors open. And Marvel ended up being it. And as we, I think the information, like, if you haven't already watched it, go back and watch our last Kirby talk. Chris gave a really good background because, everyone, even I thought like it was just like, Stan went straight to Jack and Steve, and no, it was circumstances beyond, he's probably his two favorite artists or go-to artists at the time, passed away through, unfortunate circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, luckily for us, it was, I think, from what I've seen, we wouldn't have had the Marvel Universe we had if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because clearly, as we know, without a doubt, Jack Kirby was really the father of the Marvel Universe. Not to say that Stan wasn't a good mother, but I would say that Jack was the one who, if you think about it creatively, he loved sowing his seed. So he was like going around like, oh, here's a baby here, here's a baby there. His ideas were just, his ideas just populated the DC universe.
Marvel.
Marvel Universe. Sorry, DC was later.
Later.
Yeah.
I mean, look at these designs, man.
Oh yeah. You can like there's
what a change.
There's just no doubt. Yeah, exactly. Like you've got, it's Kirby Unleashed, as I think that, Marvel were taking, like, literally, I think Stan was benefiting from the fact that Jack was in a position where he could draw as many pages as he could possibly humanly do, which meant great for him, great for his family. He's thinking about putting his kids through college and all of that. But yeah, he's just, and the ideas just flow.
Yeah, and here was a big stepping stone. I mean, was it really a change though? Because in a sense, he's still using the big monster concept. No,
I think it was it was a soft launch because they probably didn't have, who knows what sort of marketing budget they had or what they were using for advertising and promotion back then. But it was, a softer launch. And again, we've talked about this in the past. There's a very good chance that Fantastic Four #1 was actually made up of 2 stories that was meant to appear elsewhere. They could have been in Tales of Suspense. Yeah, 2 issues. Hey, look, we're going to introduce them softly, in the same way that Spider-Man ended up in Amazing Fantasy. But and again, while the Marvel titles weren't, it took them a few years to really get a hold. I think that they were still doing well enough that they could start building upon that. And one of the ways I think that benefited Marvel in a way of, because they only had, they could launch with fewer titles per month. The idea of doing bi-monthly titles meant the reality of that meant you actually had a title that would stay on the newsstand for an extra month.
Yeah.
So you had to sail through a long period of time. So, Fantastic Four may come out before Spider-Man, but the month before, but they'd be on the stand at the same time because the Fantastic Four would be there unless it was sold out. So they, again, benefiting from a bi-monthly title on the newsstand, in a way. It's, we're not used to that now, but like, a lot of our retailers today are often ordering just for the day, just for its, it's like, can I sell out of this by Saturday? Whereas the newsstands were, well, I know I can sell 10, but give me 20 anyway, because I know I can return the rest.
This is gorgeous, by the way. Wow.
Yeah. This was later redone by, I don't know, I'm presuming that Stan asked John Romita to do his version of it.
Okay.
Without the Sentinels.
Yeah, but look at the characters presented by Kirby at the time, right? Now, post Monsters now, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and this is what I'm getting to. It's like you've got one title in this instance. We're talking about the Fantastic Four, and straight away, if you go literally, if we start, because we've got a lot of slides, we can go through them fairly quickly. Here, here's just the rogues gallery from Fantastic Four, and it's like the Skrulls. It's like we've got Doctor Doom, we've got Kurgo, and even though
what a big head, boy.
Yeah, and even Kurgo, returned a couple of times
He did?
later on, but it was an example of almost like a done in one. It was like, here you go. This is the type of story you would have seen as a 6 or 8 pager in,
And this looks to me like a real creepy puppet master.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
This is the creepiest that you could have ever drawn this guy. Because now, they draw more normal looking, if you will. But nah, man, this is it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it was, it was taking him literally, like, the puppet master made him look like a puppet. He had that sort of kind of very sort of, creepy face that a puppet might have.
And I love it. The mad thinker, right? But I guess that was modeled after that statue, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The great thinker. But it's, again, it's, here's this scientist. And literally, this is Jack just going like, okay, I need a story for this issue. Quick, let me read that Scientific American. Oh, yeah, right, great scientist. Okay, bang, I've got it. And
Submariner.
Yeah, again, great use, great return for an old character.
The infant terrible.
Yeah. See, again, it's like, it just goes to show that like within the first 20 issues of Fantastic Four, you could really see how
classic.
the Fantastic Four was like trying to find its place. It was growing, and what became the Fantastic Four, like everyone remembers the Great Galactus saga and the Silver Surfer, but it took a while for the Fantastic Four to get into place, for it to fall into all the characters to find each other, for the relationships to be set up.
I mean, this is going on now right here.
Very, very topical. Yeah.
Very
I believe the hate monger has suddenly become the biggest villain on the planet right now.
Very prescient.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Many
again,
appearances. It is only the 30th issue. We're only up to. Characters. Jesus. Insane.
Yeah. I mean, again, I mean, as Sixth Element Pivot just said, I mean, again, it's one of those things where Molecule Man was one of those villains where he was too powerful. Literally, like you've suddenly realized, it's great, and you've found a cool way to get rid of him by the first story, but then you realize he's a difficult one to bring back because he's too powerful. He's too powerful.
Yeah. And look at his version of the Hulk here. I mean, how much more of a monster you want? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
He's threatening. He's he's not supposed to be. He's not supposed to be anything else. He's supposed to be threatening. And again, I thought, again, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's like, here we have, they're all standing ready for action, but Sue is holding on to Reed, hiding behind the shoulder, and that was drawn even at a time when she had her other abilities. She had the force field, the force shield. So yeah. See again.
Beautiful. Look at this.
I love this image. We've shown this before on the show, but what I love about this is it's like it's their family. It's literally like, yes, they're trying out an experiment of Reed's, but they're having fun with it. Like, and the Thing obviously has to be the one. I'm going to have a go at that because nothing will happen with me. I fall, but he's going to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And this Human Torch probably just going to give him a hot foot or something, hot ass, and laugh at him if he has an accident. But it's a great family shot. Yeah. There's no threats. There's no villain coming at them. It's just, Reed's putting out a helping hand. He's getting helping to straighten out Ben. But it's a real. It's a family, and that's
and Sue will stick there.
But again, if you look at the time, by this point, by the time Jack drew this piece, it had taken a while, but the 4 members of the Fantastic Four had become a family.
Yes, they did.
Like you look at those early issues where, the Human Torch goes off and won't come back, and he only comes back because he's found the Submariner. thing goes off because, he's the ugly one. He feels the outcast. He feels no one's giving him attention. He feels Reed's not trying to help him become Ben Grimm again. It's like, they all have those moments where they doubt their friendship with each other. They doubt the other members. But by the time we come to the sort of the Galactus saga, they're a family. They're family. The Avengers.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, it's they're Marvel's Justice League of America.
Mm-hmm.
You pull all the characters.
Once again, created by Kirby.
Yeah.
And the use of the Mole Man on the back, huh?
Oh yeah. See, it's they later they also used the Lava Men, and which was that was a Thor villain. It was they during those early 60s, the characters crossed over not too often, but they were enough to introduce each other and enough to show that anybody else picking up that book, it was like if they wanted to know, they always introduced the characters really well.
Yeah.
Like, so when the Fantastic Four would meet the X-Men and the X-Men would then meet the Avengers, it was always, you got to know who they were. Yes, they would always fight a little bit to first, but they realized
standoff, smack around each other. All right, let's get some respect, and then let's go eat a burger.
But it was, and then they realized who they were, and then they all realized we've got friends somewhere else. And for the reader, that just meant it was a bigger universe.
Absolutely. I mean, look at this: the classic Iron Man, El Hombre de Hierro.
Yeah, and again, Don Heck gets a big credit, big ups for Iron Man and his origin and his part in that. I think no one drew Tony Stark as well as Don Heck did, like his Errol Flynn. Yeah,
definitely. I agree.
It was great. And then it was like the Ant-Man. I've included a lot of Sergeant Fury. I mean, again, this was the sort of.
And it's funny, Marvel used this kind of concept back again, in future issues where it would surround the cast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this. I mean, just seeing the cover example.
Yeah. Well, you could see it was a Howling Tomatoes.
It is.
Oh yeah. No, and again, it was great that they didn't consider themselves. They didn't take themselves entirely seriously. And
it is for people that say that Thor wasn't a funny character. You see, there you go. Right?
But again, it also releases themselves to have fun, so they can enjoy it at the same time.
And obviously the classic X-Men.
Yeah, but you see again. Let's see what it is. Yeah. Again, the Avengers was a team of heroes. So Masters of Evil was a team of supervillains. See, again, it was like, so through the X-Men, both the X-Men and Black Panther are the examples of where particularly Jack Kirby was very conscious of what was going on in society.
Yes.
Now, X-Men, I think, was both a mixture of his feelings of when he was young, growing up in New York, being Jewish, and feelings, any feelings of anti-Semitism against them. But it was also at play the growing civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, it was a great way to actually put people in that shoes. Like, here's what it's like to be, people are scared of you, people are frightened of you. And so, therefore we've got the mutants, and they're treated differently from superheroes.
Yes.
I mean, when we look back on it, it's not quite rational, but it got across that message. It made people feel like a little bit about what it was like to be uncomfortable in your own skin, if you like.
Yeah, but I like the different design of Black Panther then, which is basically that half mask.
Well,
Cool.
it shows that Jack Kirby initially felt I want to show that I want to let people know, yes, his name's, it's a black character. I want to be able to show that. Whereas the final design, the final cover that appeared, which is this one, it's like, he's called the Black Panther, but again, it
could be anybody at this point.
Looking at that cover, you don't know they're in Africa at that point. You don't know anything else other than it's someone dressed in black. It could be like a Batman character.
Yep.
So I think that was kind of I would say that's both Stan and Martin Goodman. Martin, probably being more the businessman, would probably be going like, remember at the 60s, it's like even up until
they truly believe this would not sell at all.
Yeah.
Just because of that. Wow, man. The ignorance then. I mean, again, this is still a classic cover. I mean, no doubt, but this is like, wow, you know what I mean? I know me as a kid, and maybe in that era would be so impressed. I would have definitely have bought that.
Oh yeah, but I think what they're worried about is what happens if down south somewhere someone sees that and goes like, we're not going to buy Marvel comics anymore.
Yeah, true. Racist. Yeah, it was crazy stuff.
And that means that potentially for that area or anywhere within that group's reach, you're not going to be able to sell any Marvel comics anymore. So it's people do kowtow to racism. It's a long history of it. It's Hollywood. I think MTV. There's a great video of David Bowie. Like basically, he's being interviewed by MTV, and he turns it around and goes, "Why aren't you putting black artists on MTV?" So yeah, it's a great little video. But it shows you at the time that there was things at play, and it was certainly with Jack. It wasn't lost on Jack
at all.
Yeah.
But also, again, that's his upbringing in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Now we're about to go to the for me, what's probably these and the two Spider-Man annuals are my favorite annuals ever. And I think it also highlighted that at the time, it was being able to tell a long story. Like, I can tell a 40 to 60 page story in one issue. Great. Rather than just the one issue. And it's that, and that I think is something that is missing. It's like if you're going to do periodicals, you've got to do some sort of entry, like every month has to still be that entry level. If you want a big audience, like if you're not concerned, if you think you can get by on a smaller audience, then all power to you. But if you want to reach more people and get more people into it, you really have to take that approach. But
actually, which is the right one here, though?
So the first one, that's the one. The one you got up right now is the actual cover.
Okay.
The second one.
Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's a rejected cover.
A reject? Well, yeah, it was too wordy.
Well, it was too wordy, but if you look at it, go back. Right, the actual cover, what we see is a very regal Submariner.
Yeah.
In power, in dominance, and in the background, we've got the Fantastic Four trapped. Nobody else around. There's no other distractions for it. Even the soldier down the front there has been colored gray to just sort of knock him out of the picture.
Yeah.
And that's the focus. So we can see, so the Submariner's like he's now a king and he's in control. So that's a stronger visual image straight away.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, but the reprints, you see, it's also got the reprints of the origin of the Fantastic Four. And there's the backup story with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rafiq. He said that the problem with comics today, the only appeal is to people who have already read comics. Yeah, it's, I think it wasn't so much for me, but I know a lot of people, particularly Americans, who discovered comics when they would go to the barbers to have their haircut, and they could pick up a few comics, and while they're waiting, or while you're sitting there, you can read a comic, and it's done. And that was great intro, and I'm sure barbers would.
Bro, you're hysterical. That's how my mom took me to the newsstand. So I could wait patiently at the barbershop. You go to the newsstand. He's that Conan or whatever comic you see, and then go to the bar. You're hysterical. Maybe you're on some with other Americans there, bro.
Oh yeah, no, it's like if I ever had to go to the doctors, if I ever had to go to the dentist, anything like that, it would always be on the promise that on the way back I could buy some comics.
We had to get bribed, kid. Look at this.
Oh, absolutely. It was the only way I was going to come out of my room.
Yeah, but these are beautiful annual covers, and I get you them. And these one and done huge stories in one arc right here.
Yeah,
I mean, later on, Marvel started using them as a connecting annual story.
Exactly. It was like, I mean, look at that cover. Everybody's on it. Everybody's in it. Everybody makes an appearance. And you know, again, it felt really special. But you know, this was the universe they were building.
I kind of find it amusing that if you really look at this, all the characters are there, but they put the only 2 black characters here, right here on the top, right next to the R.
Yeah.
That's Falcon, ain't it?
No, Falcon wouldn't have been around by then.
Oh no,
no, that's a good goggle.
Okay, this is a great cover though. Look at that. What a small universe then.
Yeah.
But yet so fantastic.
And then the return of the original Human Torch. So again, acknowledging that with Captain America, we brought Captain America back. We brought Submariner back. Well, what happened to the original Human Torch? Well, now we know, or at least one version of it.
And a reprint of that classic battle right here in this one too.
Yeah. But you see, this was, you know, again, like, because Marvel weren't publishing too much, they could have anthology books, like even like Marvel Tales, Marvel's Greatest Comics, that would reprint stories from only just 2 years back.
And not just that, I'm looking at this cover with a Silver Surfer complete feature. I mean, is this like Silver Surfer's first story?
No,
but it's the first full Silver story. No, it's the first Surfer story done by Jack Kirby.
Ah,
yeah.
I mean, he appeared in the Fantastic Four. It's the first solo Surfer story done by Jack Kirby, I should say.
Gotcha. The first.
He goes up against Quasimodo. It's a very interesting story as well.
Or he creates Quasimodo, in fact.
That's right.
Or he basically, Quasimodo was a computer program, and the Silver Surfer gives him the ability to have arms and legs and gives him a body.
And of course, being ungrateful.
Yep. But again, but what was also cool is the lead story for that issue was it was pretty much without Reed and Sue. It was Johnny and Ben teaming up with Black Panther and the Inhumans.
Pretty cool team up right there too.
Yeah. See, again, showing you that you didn't need the entire Fantastic Four together at one time, but again, showcasing some, you know, their core supporting cast. And I think that that's a great use of the annual to, like, oh, okay, well, we've got these, you know, we've created these characters, the Inhumans, we need to, where can we showcase them all? Well, actually, just bring them back in the Fantastic Four annual. Oh, that's a great idea. It's keeping the characters around. And again, you know, you look at them, and it was, they weren't at a stage then where anyone was thinking of them for their own title. Like, they were cool characters, but let's just keep using them every now and again, but not give them their own book.
And this is the first Annihilus, right?
Yep. First appearance.
That's the first one, yeah.
Yep.
And look at that, and a king size special 6. So the annuals also had those, you know, first appearances. So don't dismiss them.
Those first, man. These first annuals, they are absolutely amazing. Number 2 introduced Dr. Doom. This one introduces Helios. So these were must reads. They were not just throwaway books. This is one of my favorite storylines.
What is this cover here? This is gorgeous, and this is like King Kong, top of the world, kiddo, versus Fantastic Four.
They'd always.
It's actually a four-parter. It's very, very good.
Yeah, but it's also, again, it was like it's highlighting the fact that they're, yes, they're a family. Yes, they argue, they fall out. It's volatile. And again, you have Ben was always looking for that cure to take him back to being human again, and would get angry if it didn't work. Or now this is my one of my favorite team-up issues.
Look at
great story.
It's fantastic. It's and again, the Fantastic Four have been tricked by Doctor Doom into thinking that these are robots. And the reason that, and one of the reasons that actually works is when the Thing fights with Thor, the Thing expects Thor to be more powerful, but it ties into his own storyline at that time where Thor was actually only his half power.
Oh, word. Okay.
This also ties into a Daredevil story where the Daredevil Doctor Doom switched minds.
That's right.
And they think that Daredevil is Doctor Doom here. That's how the story kicks off. So when we talk about all these tie-ins nowadays, well, they did it in the 60s as well. And they did it very cleverly.
Okay, but you needed to read those tie-ins to really understand.
No, there would be a caption box explaining it, but also, what this was saying, it would say, "Oh, check out Daredevil still on the stands."
Gotcha. So making the speculator and me go out and Mom, can I get this issue, please?
Oh yeah,
sneaky bastards.
Yeah, they're sneaky, but it still reads without it helps if you've read them, but it doesn't matter if you haven't. It's a great issue. And it gets to see all our heroes fight. And again, there's nothing like you learn about these characters as they fight.
And talking about something we did better in the 60s, because we started this was a fewer books better.
This is
just going back to this issue with Daredevil tying into Daredevil, tying into Thor. They gave you the actual page now, the issue number. We say, okay, grab the latest issue of Daredevil if you want to read the full story. When I came back to the X-Men somewhere in 2000, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, something like that, they'd all talked about Kitty being gone in a bullet.
Yeah.
I had no idea in what issue that happened. So I had to do massive research until I came, it's Astonishing X-Men, there was an Astonishing X-Men book, to get that story. Because they would never tell you. Editorial didn't say, well, basically, if you want to find out what they're talking about, go to the Astonishing X-Men by Josh Whedon. They did this much better in the 60s.
And that's, as we get to that, as we go on, I mean, we're still only just looking through Jack's art. We're going to talk more about how.
Oh, look at that, dude! Look how small the Hulk looks again, but he's still about to put a smackdown on him. Look at this.
Yeah, and they were both starring in Tales to Astonish.
Woo! Look at this.
Yep.
It's funny. The black and white, you actually see the pupils of Daredevil, but yet once the mask is on, it's a wrap.
Well, you've also got the movement lines, which have been taken out. Now, this is an interesting cover. There's 3 artists' work there.
3 on one cover.
Yep. So it was originally penciled by Jack Kirby, but with both Captain America's figures slightly tweaked, but definitely the Falcon redrawn by John Romita. But inked, with the exception of the Falcon, everything else was inked by Bill Everett.
Oh, wow. And to answer Vino's question, I think sometimes they do that, but not often.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow, look at these panels, though, bro.
No, I included this because
so amazing.
It's a Tales of Asgard story, but it's a backup. But what it does is it tells you the origin of mankind as far as the Marvel universe.
So they get religious here, in a sense.
Yeah, but they don't say Earth; they say Midgard.
Midgard.
I think if you want to pick up on that question, because I think it's interesting, Jack Kirby's return to Marvel in the 70s. I think if you go back and I liked it when I was a kid, and then I reread it like 10 years ago, and I didn't like it so much. And if you read it today, if you especially read the Med Bomb arc, the first arc, wow, Kirby was very much ahead of its time. Read that arc, and you will find a lot of parallels to politics today.
Oh, see, I loved. Yeah, I mean, again, it's I kind of have to make sure that I'm checking myself a little bit because it's Jack Kirby and I love Jack Kirby, but the stories were at first I was thought, wow, these are a bit wild. But then when you get into them, you go like, yes, they're wild. It's him continuing on from themes that he played within his Fourth World stories, particularly things like Forever People. Like, if you look at the Mad Bomb story, that would have been, you could have told the story with the Forever People.
That's right.
It's, it's Glorious Godfrey and all of those type of characters so it really worked. I thought it worked super well. I loved them. And again, you had that amazing bicentennial issue. I put a couple of these in. You're onto Steve Ditko. But yeah, no, I loved those Captain Americas, and like that annual where he meets the space vampire and he meets Magneto.
That's a if you want to read a very good horror story, that is a very good horror story. Also the second annual he did was Magneto, which is a little bit weak.
Yeah. So I'm definitely thumbs up on them.
Me too.
Yes.
So I just threw this in because like Steve Ditko did Blue Beetle, and there's a creator that I'm trying to remember his name he's been doing cover recreations of Daredevil, but he includes Blue Beetle instead of Spider-Man. So it's Blue Beetle versus Dr. Octopus. It's Blue Beetle versus Kraven Hunter. As for that note, we just saw the question.
The Captain Atom. Boy.
Oh yeah. See, it was even the version. I quite like that Captain Atom, but it was actually the very first version of Captain Atom I preferred. Yeah. Yep. As for the question we just got about Stan's credit, I think it's. I tend to think of Jack Kirby as the father of the Marvel Universe and the main creator of the founding blocks and the majority of the creations that we know today. However, you can't ignore Stan's. Basically, Stan's the guy who had to play politics with the publishing houses. His own uncle. He had to wear the PR and marketing hat.
He was the businessman. He was the hype man. He was the front man in a sense.
Yeah, and I think there's some also when it came to Marvel's trying to secure its ownership of its properties when they sold. That's when Stan really had to take ownership of them, maybe more than he was comfortable with then, because the company needed to own them for sale. So it's one of the reasons why I think he kept that story going as far as I'm the main creator. Oh yes, I created this, I created that, I wrote this, I wrote that. It's because he had to say that because they wanted to sell the company, and if you left it open for lawyers, it's why Disney ended up settling with the Kirby estate. They realized that there's enough evidence, enough circumstantial evidence to show that Jack Kirby did the heavy lifting as far as the creation, and he didn't have contracts for a lot of the work he did at Marvel for that period. So but it's a tough one. Stan definitely pulled his weight as far as the creation of Marvel, the company. I would give him the credit for that, absolutely 100%. The company and keeping it running, keeping the doors open, the marketing, but Jack on the creative fronts as far as the IP itself and the Marvel Universe. And obviously, Steve Ditko was a very big part of that. It's not just Spider-Man, Doctor Strange. What he brought with Doctor Strange, and that just opened up an entire new universe for Marvel to play in.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
So wait, guys, before we continue here, like I said, I do have 2 codes to give away, right, for the Empty Man. And because Rafiq has been asking questions and throwing it out there with commentary, Rafiq, congratulations on behalf of Comic Crusaders and International Comic Crusaders, courtesy of Disney 20th Century Fox. We're going to bless you with a code to download the Empty Man, available on movies anywhere on the 12th. All right, so I'm sending the code shortly. Just DM us on Twitter, and we got you from there. Now we may continue.
Awesome. Oh, brilliant.
Excellent.
Well done, man. And thanks for asking us questions.
Absolutely. Man. We love that.
Now you're getting blessed for it. Woo!
Yeah. So let's move on. What's the next slide? Yeah, so
Spider-Man number 1.
Classic number 1, which is issue 2, right?
Well, yeah.
But if you look,
and you see, you have the 2 stories in there. You have still 2 stories in there.
Yeah, Amazing Fantasy. Then Spider-Man number 1 with 2 stories. I think issue 2 had 2 stories as well.
I think so. Yeah,
and it was issue
story.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was issue 3. But as we've already stated, if we go through Spider-Man's rogue gallery, it's so clear. Like, if you took away all the contributions that Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby brought to the table, you really aren't left with much. And again, it goes back to the conversation we had on the previous podcast. I think with Matt Baker and Joe Mealy were fine artists. I don't think they were the creative powerhouses to have brought the Marvel Universe into existence.
Not without Jack.
Yeah. Yep. So, and again, in the great scheme of things, if you look at the entire history of Marvel and
oh man,
shoot.
Hey Bob, if you watch it, where's my Mysterio statue? Just kidding.
But no, I mean, look, it was just non-stop. I mean, this is.
There's a weird looking Beetle though. Got them gloves, bro.
But remember, this is the.
What else did he use them for?
Oh yeah. but
Jonas Robot. Oh man.
Oh yeah, you remember him? Yeah.
Look at that psycho face, bro.
Yeah.
The Crime Master.
But you see, that's the thing. It's like so much of it is from a period, like the Crime Master. It's like you wouldn't create
a burglar.
Yeah.
I always love this character, man.
Yeah. See, I'm surprised they never used the Chameleon, even just not as a main character, but as a secondary. They could have used him.
Man. You could use him in a movie. This is a sneaky character right here, man.
Oh yeah.
Oh, of course, bro. Of course, right?
Yep.
Goodness, man. Doc Ock.
Bro,
man, how did you put on a shirt like that, though? I mean, or they got to rip through, or they Velcro maybe in between. Wait.
Well.
Fashion tips for Dr. Octopus. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love this version of Electro. See, this is one of the earliest villains I've read in Spider-Man comics. I think one of my first comic book tales was when he was fighting Electro, this version. And then I see what they did with the curving blue looking one. I'm like, I want to see this. I know it looks silly, but this would be so awesome.
Oh yeah, no, his helmet alone would be like.
Bro, I had this book in my hands once in mass, and the guy didn't want to let it go. He didn't want to go down by $10. I only had 20. He wanted. I got it down from 40, but he wanted 30, and he just didn't want to refuse, bro. I would have paid. It was in great condition. Look at these guys. I mean, you're gonna an enforcer in the mob over here. He's gonna lasso you up, and this dude looks like Destro from G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Right.
You see, but see, this is the thing. When you go back, oh yeah, you can imagine. But
yes.
but when you go back and you look at that period, they were sort of more believable, if you like, villains. They were
the gangsters,
thugs,
like
actual gangsters. That's what people could associate. Exactly, yeah. Sixth Element, yeah, totally. These were gangster. However, once you start having everyone power up to the point where you've got Spider-Man these days being able to sort of leap tall buildings at a single bound,
and villains flying around locomotives,
yeah, then those villains just it's like, it's a bit like, well, why don't you see supervillains stopping people like, handbag snatchers? It's like, that's one page, boom, they're done. Okay, right, what's next? So it's always
stylish brother right here.
But you see, you look at Craven, right? Craven now, like Spider-Man is just too powerful for Craven.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe that, but again, the mighty human hunter, whatever. But right now, you absolutely. What was that story? That's the story when he was in the black suit with Craven. Craven's last hunt.
The last hunt.
Oh my God, guys! Highly recommend that Spider-Man.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
The living brain. Jeez.
Yeah.
The lizard. But it was funny though. They always got him with crocodiles.
Yeah.
Sandman, OG, bro, for real.
Yeah, but again, it shows you that there was literally an explosion of creativity at Marvel between 1961 and 66. Like bang, it was just all over the place. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the Vulture, bro. Oh man, kicking ass.
Yep. Spidey would, stop criminals. Like he would. It would like.
And here you go, the extended, universe of Spidey, or Cash rather, as you had mentioned earlier. We start, seeing here the Flash being Flash, like always, right?
Yeah, but you see, again, it's like when someone says, "Who created Spider-Man?" It's like, again, it's like it's not a case of just strictly, well, here's the costume, here's his powers, and here's his alter ego. Between this, like everything you've seen there. The entire Rogues Gallery, all his classmates, his Aunt May, Uncle Ben, everything, J. Jonah Jameson, the Daily Bugle, that's Spider-Man. So when you say who created Spider-Man, I include all of that. And if you look at what's been created since Steve Ditko left, there's not really a great deal. Everything still is from that font. Everything is still... who's, like, oh, how's the Green Goblin going to return again? It's all, it's done like that. And it was just, you had it. And again, like, I wonder where Spidey would have taken Spider-Man, where Steve Ditko would have taken Spider-Man if he stayed and had more say. I love the fact that, like, I love Doc Octopus going... He's like Chris Buse. He's just going.
Definitely. I have my arms hidden now.
He's got the glasses. Just shave that. Take that. Is that wig? He's Doc Octopus.
Yeah, of course he does.
I'm about to send Chris a Mo wig then and see how he looks on him.
Or one of those old school.
Send you some old pictures.
Do you remember there was an issue of the Fantastic Four where the Yancey Street Gang sent the Thing a Beatles wig.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh man, yeah, we gotta do that. Cool. Well, look at these classic battles. Oh, this is just the robots right here. Look at this.
Oh yeah, but you see, like, so I included a couple of spreads from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 annual, the Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six, only because they're just, again, there's 6 spreads. There's another one. There's 6 full-page splashes in that annual, and each one is where Spider-Man fights the villain, and he takes them all on one-on-one.
And gangster, he handles his business though.
Yep.
But Doc Ock does everything, huh? Look at this. Got his scuba gear. He ready, boy. Doc Ock ain't playing, man. Oh wow! Look at this.
Yeah, gorgeous. That's the cover, and that's the all 6 splashes from the issue.
Look at this.
But that
Amazing, huh?
that it's like, I wish that someone would do a comic that I could pick up and have that same feeling that I
Right.
got from that annual. That's what I'm looking for.
Like a skinny old Spidey, man, before he started eating some good food. Got a job, you know?
But again, it was what we've lost is we've lost Spider-Man public menace.
Yeah.
He's not
That's
being
gone.
chased anymore. He's not chased anymore. He's loved. He's so
we need him to be like this, back to the email, doubting himself.
yeah.
That's the spirit of the person that overcomes adversity.
And I included the cover in. I know we've seen a couple of the pages in Chris's slide, but it's like again, this was world building. This was again, it's I wanted to talk about the fact that Marvel didn't have a huge amount of titles, but what they did is they maximized the appearance of the characters. Again, both for marketing, they realized, well, it's a cheaper way to market by actually including that character in another book.
Absolutely.
And so they can promote that. So if you haven't been exposed to that character and you just buy Spider-Man, that's it. You've been exposed to Daredevil now. You might want to try out his book. So,
really, though, thank God they went with the red. Bro.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about that too. But it's they really by a mixture of the bi-monthlies, the anthology format where like Tales to Astonish, they'd have like the two characters having 10-page strips. Spider-Man has become a comedian because it's all about we're not seeing growth in the character anymore, and we've seen all the growth now. It's all about sort of we're in a holding pattern. Like, is he going to reveal his identity? Is he not going to reveal his identity? Has he always revealed it, or is he going to take it back? Is it, is he going to get back with Mary Jane again? That's about it. Sixth Element. See that, and even the Fantastic Four, they just had long johns.
And then
in fact, actually,
earlier, it's beautiful in black and white. Look at this.
Oh, that's why I included them. It's just like I just love seeing original artwork.
Oh God, look at this guy.
Oh, and the three faces of J. Jonah Jameson.
That's a great emotion though, just displayed throughout as he keeps hearing. Crap.
Yeah.
And Aunt May, I mean, look, that's the Aunt May. I mean, wow, she is really at 200 years old now, and now yet they keep reversing her in age. So what's the secret there?
But
why
look,
is she getting younger?
Look, this is I know we don't see thought balloons in comics anymore.
Yeah.
But see, in that one panel, you're telling several pages worth of story from today. She's getting the phone call. We see the expression on her face, the emotion, like the whole weight is on her body. Like Steve Ditko draws that pain and anguish and age in her face. And she's and everything she's worried about is there in a thought balloon. It's comics. We're not trying to put film on a panel every time.
But it is a beautiful rendition here.
Oh, it's just great, but it's just that character moments. It's like it's like back with like Doc Octopus having the cigarette. Like he's got like he's leaning down. He's got everyone around him like egging him on, and he's going like, "Leave me alone. I want a cigarette. I'm thinking about it."
Look how amazing this is. Is that one of the first? This is the first confrontation. Yep.
First meeting of Spider-Man and Dr. Doom.
See, I made a comment about Aunt May, and this is what I get.
But Marissa Tomei, okay. The expression is, I tap that.
Man.
Oh, look at this. This is amazing.
Trippy, right? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful work by Ditko. I mean, he was definitely a boss at that, within that Strange run.
Yeah. I mean, it was
trippy stuff, bro.
Yeah. I mean, look at the body language, that tree that's actually looks like a hand held out. It's like to catch him. It's just great. It's just amazing.
Yeah, man. I'm starting to look like him with the grays on the side, bro. Jeez.
It's that Reed
With the
Richards
cape.
look thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, but again, I think that, you know, Doctor Strange, with Doctor Strange and Nick Fury in the same comic together. It's like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, and then Jim Steranko and Dan Adkins and
Jeez.
Mary Severin, and yeah.
Look at that. And
Yeah.
look again with the cross, also the torch and the thing.
Well, yeah, because at the first few issues was the Human Torch had his own strip.
Human Torch.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Then occasionally the Thing would cross. There'd be the Thing as well in it, so it'd be the pair of them. And then they left, and that's when Nick Fury got his strip.
And here it goes that, you know, one of these. I don't know. I was never, to be honest, the biggest Doctor Strange fan, just of the character. I mean, the art was beautiful and all. I don't know. I never really dug the character that much myself.
I think it's like anything. It's like if you know, it didn't have, like, again, it had shorter stories, so it didn't have the luxury of having full issues to tell the story, to slowly tell it. But I think as well, it was removed from the Marvel universe. It was showing another side of the Marvel universe, but it was removed from it. But it was just showing you this other side that was like constantly, it was a threat, and which they played quite effectively in the movie. It's like,
oh, absolutely.
You know, with Doctor Strange, we protect the realm, but only from forces outside trying to come in. They're not going to help them with,
physical threat.
Yeah, not going to help with Doctor Doom necessarily.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, again, another piece of...
and what a difference, though, in how people draw the whole from a Kirby to a Ditko.
Yeah, and I think that Ditko was quite faithful in some of the stories to kind of get the Kirby, like, if you look at that, that's quite Kirby-esque. And that could be more like, you know, the way it's not only Steve Ditko's pencils, but George Bell's inks. But there's some issues of the Hulk, particularly like where the Hulk versus the Metal Master were very much Steve Ditko. Yeah. And that's an unpublished page by Steve Ditko.
Gorgeous, man.
I just thought to throw that in because it's always good to see a bit of unpublished artwork once in a while.
Oh, absolutely. This is fantastic, man. From 64, look at that. Wow.
But, you know, again, it's like, I think while it took a few years for Marvel to take off, I think they did fairly well out the gate, but obviously not quite getting into the top 20 yet.
Not yet, but we had another person in their stable that was producing some work, and you briefly mentioned them earlier. You know,
but I think
next.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, that's how it works. But I think that Marvel got to a stage that at that point where they had just the right amount of titles. Like if you're a fan of comics and you want to read some comics, like, you know, sure, you might have to wait 2 months for the next issue of a certain comic, but you did, and as long as you had something else to read in the meantime, you did. And I look back and I think that in the 1960s, Marvel had just the right amount of titles.
Oh yeah.
And if it had stayed at that amount and it kept spinning it round so that it was like, okay, well, we'll change the creative teams, we'll bring back the villains again, kept it going. I think they would have kept going, even like they've been very strong. And I think going into the 70s, I think what would have, if they gone ahead with their plan that they did do, which was launch the black and white comics,
yeah,
and had both the color comics and the magazines, but at a point where everyone can afford both. And I think this is one of the downfalls of, unfortunately, it's a capitalist culture. And one of the problems with capitalism doesn't actually work well with the arts. And where, you know, you look at I think, you know, in the 1960s, Marvel was producing art. And you can focus it down to sort of like maybe just a handful of creators, but I think they were producing an art. There was an art talk they were doing, and it was great.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, one of the problems was that the moment you start, $4 is way too expensive.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
But I think, you know, once you get to that point where you break your collector, and this is it. It's like, I think there was probably a lot of people, the actual collectors, and I'm not talking about just the casual buyers, the regular collectors of comics in the 60s, they were buying Marvel, and they were probably buying DC as well, and maybe bits of others, and they could afford to buy them all. And as collectors, they could stay being collectors because it was achievable to buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
As you move on, not only are both companies doubling their output, but by doubling their output, and you're also making it harder to buy everything and buy what went before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's harder to complete those runs. And then obviously the more time goes on, as you enter, like, it's impossible now. It's unless you win the lottery, it's impossible now you can't finish a run of Fantastic Four. You can't finish a run of the Avengers. It's just too expensive, too cost prohibitive.
Oh, absolutely, man.
And if you think about, if you're appealing to the collector mentality, you've broken them because they can't. It's just it's too much. And you know, you could be a collector before. You could collect the entire Marvel run, so therefore you had it all. I was like that when I was a kid. I could afford to buy every single Marvel book, to the point where I would pick up the reprints of books that I'd even look through and go, I don't really want it, but it's the only one I don't have.
Yeah.
And the next issue might be good, so I didn't want to break a run.
The collector and us, damn it.
Oh yeah. But they've done away with that. They've crushed that.
No, they absolutely have. They made it impossible.
Definitely.
Like somebody mentioned earlier, the events, for example, it's just impossible. You can't do it. You just can't do it. You know?
I mean, think about it. If you buy 10 comics a month, that's $40. I mean,
yeah.
If not more.
Exactly. I mean, just try to do the Marvel where they release at least on average about 15 titles a week.
Mm.
You know what I mean? A week, and that's not counting variants, because there's people that want variants, and sometimes those variants are priced a little bit higher at the shop. You know, for the exclusivity reasons. So it's insane, you know. But here comes another artist, right, from the time that helped in the 60s, Mr. Don Heck.
Yeah. Again, it's
very underrated. Very underrated.
Yeah. There's a page of Avengers I've got later on in this slideshow. That's where it's Wallywood inks on Don Heck.
Yes.
And
Look at Black Widow then.
I love those issues.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's changed a lot too, Crimson Dynamo, from that OG design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The mysterious melter.
Oh yeah. Well, if you're made of metal, what are you going to be scared of? Someone melting you.
Right?
Makes sense.
Yep.
Or Jack Frost giving you some rust, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is fantastic. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that cover.
But what's interesting was Black Widow and Hawkeye both started out as bad guys and became good guys.
Yeah. True. So did Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Yep, and people are already discussing the WandaVision that comes out next weekend. You know.
Oh, it starts next week. Okay, cool.
Yeah, next week, man. It's gonna be.
I saw the first reviews were up. I'm not looking at them. I want to watch that show.
Look at it. This is fantastic, man. This is art by Kirby with the inks of Heck.
Oh, yeah, Don Heck was a lovely inker on Jack Kirby.
Yeah, man. He definitely complimented.
Yeah, and there's some nice feathering work on it. It's just and as we talked earlier about it's funny, like if you Oh, that's Don Heck inked by Tom Palmer, looking very
Yes.
Neil Adams.
Yes, very Neil
gorgeous, bro.
But as you know, like Jack Kirby drew, like he drew very strong women, but they were you could never say they were ugly. Steve Ditko, beautiful women. Wally Wood, John Buscema, all drew fantastic women. And Don Heck, gorgeous. Yeah.
Definitely.
And another guy in the stable, in that those early days, which you mentioned earlier again, Mr. Romita. And that's, with this Kingpin though, that's classic, son. Though.
Yeah,
definitely.
But it's funny. Like I include Romita, but I think of him more as a latecomer.
Yeah,
Yeah, even like Buscema was before him, and Wally Wood was.
But remember that Romita also drew Captain America in the 50s.
Yeah.
Bro, look at this. That is nice stuff. You can see the changes in Pete's face and all, though. From going from Ditko to Romita.
Oh yeah, but it was
huge change.
But it was that decision, and it might, whether it was a commercial decision or good decision or not. I think it was a commercial decision to make Peter Parker like Archie. If you basically that's where Peter Parker became Archie, and if you think of Gwen Stacy and MJ as Betty and Veronica, completes the image.
It made total sense because there were 4 or 5, actually 5 or 6 Archie books that were in the top 20 at that time. Yeah, it's mind-boggling, but it's true.
Crazy, really? Archie was smashing it like that, bro. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it just makes you wonder that why they didn't play that up more on the covers.
That's a very good point.
It's like if you want to go that way, then do it on the covers and draw that audience in. Otherwise, they're not going to know.
Exactly, that's a good point. It's a very good point, actually.
And a question: if he's made of silver, why did he need silver trunks too? I'm just question.
The comics code.
I think that's became something where it was literally. I think sometimes when a pencil artist puts a line in just to show that the leg is creased.
Oh, gotcha.
And I think inkers would think, oh, he didn't complete that line, and they put trunks on him.
That's John Romita. That's a great story. I love this.
Yeah,
I wrote about this extensively.
Oh, I know. And I put this in because I think this is probably my 2 favorite pages of John Romita.
But they're gorgeous, bro.
Very, very much. I love this very much.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So is this the first app of Satana?
Yeah, no? That's the first one. That's the first appearance of Satana.
Well, see, this is one of those black and white magazines, right?
Yes, it's from Vampire Tales #2.
Look at that. Gorgeous, though, with the black and white art like this, man.
Yeah.
I miss those days, bro. And somebody says, no worries, Rafiq. It's coming.
Oh, John Buscema's coming. John Buscema's coming.
No worries, bro.
Yeah, we're ahead of you, man. We're way, way ahead of you.
Yeah, but this is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
The artistry in this. The presentation, this is definitely Romita's best right there.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Let's see. We're almost getting there, Rafiq. No worries. We got another legend coming up right now. And again, that was also mentioned earlier. None other than Mr. Wally Wood.
Of course.
I think it's. Wally's. You look back and he's got an amazing body of work, but you can clearly tell very troubled man, and it's and by troubled that can also mean, sometimes you make a choice at a particular time, and if you think it might be very principled. Like if you look at when Steve Ditko left Marvel, at one point, like Jack Kirby was considering leaving with Steve Ditko, but Jack just, Jack had a family. There's no way he was he could give that up. Whereas, Steve didn't. Steve was living by himself.
But Wally was on the stuff here. I mean, if you got an overwhelming desire, be prepared to put up with the crushing rejection and disappointment at work. Double shifts for standard pay if you make it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was tough. And this comic here, this is from back in '78. Comics are on their way out. I think the only hope is the way of European comics, hardcover books and limited editions. Don't have to sell 1 million copies. But I mean, you kind of believe something like that, right? We're going with the graphic novel maybe once or twice a year, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to go dark here for a moment, the two artists who really made Daredevil a breakout star in the early days, the original Daredevil from the 40s and Bollywood, who clearly put Daredevil over the top in the 60s, they both committed suicide.
Oh wow, really?
Both by gunshot.
Damn, bro.
Wow, this is. I love these pages. I get a lot of flack for this, but my favorite Avengers team is always Captain America, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye. This is my favorite from my childhood. This is my favorite Avengers team.
Yeah, but look here. See, this is Don Heck inked by Wally Wood, and look at that. Now, I wanted to include really this is a copy from the original artwork. What's amazing here is it's like it doesn't need color.
It doesn't.
No.
When Wally Wood inks, he inks. It's a solid. There's feathering. He puts the right amount of black in the foregrounds and the backgrounds to make everything stand out. Like,
but you still see a lot. You still see a lot of Don Heck in there. That is the. That is why Wally Wood is so good in this.
Oh yeah, but there's no like. You're not questioning who inked it. You actually have to look closely for the penciler. That's the thing with with Wally. Wally would do that.
True.
Wally did that. I think it was like a lot of the work he did for DC. He was doing, was it All Star Squadron? He was inking Rick Estrada, and basically it's like night and day. Like Wally was completely making that his.
What's so interesting is this is the first Wally Wood issue, and you see on the cover, Stan announces Wally Wood. The issues, the 3 issues that came before, were done by Joe Orlando. They were both EC artists. They're both great artists. But Stan didn't announce Joe Orlando on the cover. He announces Wally Wood on the cover.
Yep.
As a world-renowned illustrator or something.
Man, look at this. Look at that. So this is the first arc by Wally?
That's the first art, yeah. You see he already changed the costume. Changed the costume.
The double D.
Yep. Double D.
He also made the leotard and the belt much clearer because it kept changing the first issues.
Yeah. No, and of course the radar sense. But
yes.
Look at that though.
Yeah. But see, what's interesting is the difference between Wally Wood coming on board and Wally Wood leaving.
Yeah, I know where you're getting with this.
Yeah. But again, it's, I think that, yes, some great talent came along to Marvel after Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby left. No doubts about it. But however, if Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko had stayed, how different would Marvel have been? And to be honest, to have made Jack stay, it wouldn't have wanted sort of, better pay and just like his name more prominent. We would have seen, say, Thor become the new gods. We would have seen Darkseid in the Marvel universe.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that would mean that there would probably have not been a Thanos at all.
Bro, I gotta give it to him here though. If you a full detail of the Billy Club and what's in there. Look at this.
Yeah. I've got it in another slide as well. But yeah, it's that's. See, again, it's like it's when you see the the artwork in black and white, and you see how crisp and sharp Bollywood's line work is. It's just wonderful.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insanely talented.
But again, I think that, you know, if again, it's a lot of ifs. It's like, I think the biggest what if that Marvel could do is, what if Stan hadn't pissed Bollywood off and he'd stayed?
Exactly.
What if Steve Ditko had more of a say in Spider-Man going forward and he'd stayed and been treated better and paid better? Same for Jack. How different would the Marvel universe have been?
Yo, this is wild, yo. Look at this cover.
Yeah. I mean, again, and look at the coloring on it. It's so well colored, like bang, grays in the background. You got the little yellow spotlight, and him all like the only red being on Daredevil's costume.
Mm.
Look at this, gorgeous. Who is the organizer? Damn names, bro. He looks like Birdman from what was that? Was that the bird guy, whatever, from Rick and Morty?
Mm.
That's what he reminds me of right there. Bird person or whatever it is. Oh, this is hysterical, man. Beautiful art though.
Oh yeah.
Fun. Wow, look at that detail.
But yeah, see, Bollywood did turnarounds for not just for himself, but for anybody else working on it, so that everyone be drawing the character consistently.
Wow, see, consistency is key, folks. Thank you, Mr. Wood.
But it's also the level of detail that often gets missed when you're reading a comic book. Yeah, no, there would have been a ton more characters.
Yes,
but you know, Sixth Element, there would have been probably we might have lost out of some others that you're very fond of if they had stayed, because, like, you know, again, like anywhere, there's a vacuum. Like, you creators leave, you need to replace them. You bring new creators in. It gives creators. If you think about a lot of the creators that were suddenly given the chance, you know, would we have had Jim Starlin? Would we have had Howard Chaykin? Would we have had Walt Simonson? It's like all these guys were given breaks because somebody else left, took something else, went somewhere else, and they're looking for new talent. And here's a shot of the Billy Club. So you could see exactly like how he was playing it. And look, it's a nunchuck.
And he had a tape recorder in it, bro.
Oh, he had everything.
Batteries, a microphone, a cable, a hinge, a firing chamber, a reflector. I mean, this thing has everything, bro. What?
Yeah.
Bro, this man had everything in here. And look at this difference, the makeover. From 5 to 7 is when the makeover happened, huh?
Yes.
I mean, did he know though what color he was choosing? I mean, the character there.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's like feels. This is red, or maybe burgundy. Not quite sure.
Does color have a feeling? A serious question. You know what I mean? And you see, and that's a true point, right? So now they get broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got electronics in there, unless it's some type of cushion.
But you see, it was just putting in some detail that you didn't need to.
Bollywood was the first to put on the radar sense visually.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I put this shot in, because it's the way he's using it, like literally his whole body language, and he's talking about it. It's that light bulb moment when it's like, right, I found it. Like, you know, that's and one of the most, I had no idea why he didn't get credit, but Bollywood's name is not on the Netflix Daredevil series.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Of all the people, of all his contributions, the most important contributions were made by Bollywood, other than the actual origin of the character itself, the supporting cast. Everything about Daredevil was refined, created by Bollywood, and they chose to ignore it. And that's
interesting. Don't start no stuff now. People are gonna start researching and starting some business here. All right, now to Rafiq's dream.
Yeah.
He was like, guys, you guys too. Of course we are.
Big John Buscema.
Yeah, man, and that's how he was. He's a monster like that in the world of Marvel, for sure, yo. A beast.
Yeah. And I think that, I've not included. I don't think I included anything from that wasn't in the 70s here, because I've been trying to stick to that sort of 60s period. But
oh my God!
So this was the first time. It's not the first time I saw John Buscema's work.
Yeah.
But if you go to the next slide, that's the finished poster. I remember it was a British weekly comic, Marvel UK, Mighty World of Marvel, and they did that as a poster insert.
Nice.
And for the first time, I wanted to go like, damn, like John Buscema. Oh, I recognize his stuff. He drew some of this and this. But up until that point, it was like, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby. But when I saw this, I'd seen John Buscema's work before, but seeing it in that poster and seeing it like that, it was just like, wow. And that was on my wall for years as a kid.
Where is it now?
Hopefully it's recycled somewhere.
Let's hope. Nice word, Bendito. Rest in peace, poster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful poster, but yeah.
Oh man. Did you call this something like crayon almost?
Yeah, it looks like it did, didn't it?
It's beautiful though.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
Now this piece it's absolutely stunning. But when you see the next slide, you'll see where it's inked and colored. And go back and forth, and you'll see that there's a character missing in the pencils that's now in the inks. It's Hercules.
A weird looking Hercules at that, so doesn't quite look like the same Herc.
Well, this piece was Hercules was penciled and inked, and the whole piece was inked by Bill Everett.
Huh. Why was he missing from the OG though?
Because I think that at the time it was Hercules was a recent addition to the Avengers and wasn't necessarily sticking around, or they weren't sure if he was going to stick around or not.
Gotcha.
But I think Stan felt that he needed to be in there, so he asked Bill Everett to ink it and then draw Hercules in.
Thank goodness they put a beard on him, bro. That's the difference right there.
That's it.
Yeah, for real. He needed the beard.
Yeah, but beautiful. I mean, look at that. Like every single pose individual.
Absolutely, man. I mean, Giant Man back in the day was boss. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Thor. I mean, that's the Thor I always kind of picture in my head. But
yeah.
I mean, oh man, look at this iconic cover.
Yeah. No, when they had to travel back in time and face themselves. Yeah.
Woo!
This piece was so the story goes that for the issue of the Avengers, that this may look similar to the actual cover that was used. What happened was John Buscema drew a cover.
Okay.
It was lost.
Really?
He then had to redraw it quickly, and it was inked and printed. However, the original showed up afterwards. Yeah. And this is a copy of it that was inked by Mike Golden.
Oh, okay, nice.
So this is Michael Golden's inks over John Buscema that was done for a commission for someone. This never saw print, but again, it's a nice thing to see.
It is fire. Huh? Yeah. Look at these covers. Look at this.
John Buscema inked by Tom Palmer.
And so that's the first Red Wolf, right? Right here too, then.
Yeah.
Nice first app created by John then.
Yeah, and I mean, literally, it was for a while. It was almost the one and only appearance. It was, but again, it was, Marvel making efforts to try to sort of introduce characters of, other origins into the comics.
Oh, yeah, Vision.
And this I had to include just because it's just so I remember seeing
moment here, bro.
Yeah, I remember seeing that for the first time. Just amazing story.
I hope you didn't cry. Yeah, be okay.
No, nearly.
There he goes with the beard. Now he looks more normal, bro. Look at that.
Yeah.
Great picture. I mean, look at the seriousness in that man's face. See some dude coming at you like that, I'm bouncing, bro.
Yeah. But I mean, again, it's like, just imagine that.
Iconic.
Now, this is a recreation This isn't the original cover.
No,
but it's one of my probably the favorite cover by John Buscema. And the Silver Surfer #4. Silver Surfer goes to Asgard.
Yeah,
and great issue, fantastic issue. Again, like the entire run of the Silver Surfer, not the best written series, but that issue, I'm 100% happy with it. I just loved it. And again, it was the artwork that it was just, you know, John Buscema's, the emotion he gave the Silver Surfer, it was fantastic. And I think, as you'll see, so Silver Surfer, you know, again, it was, looking back, it does make you wonder why Jack Kirby didn't draw it. But however, John Buscema, I think looking back, I would have loved to have seen, like the credits read, story by Jack Kirby, art by John Buscema. Yeah. Because I think that we'd have seen a very different Silver Surfer. But John Buscema's artwork was phenomenal. I think it showed it. I think he, towards the end, see Mephisto, absolutely. John, like, no one's drawn this character better than John Buscema. Absolutely fantastic.
Look at that. Nothing could beat that ever.
Yep.
Ever. Oh man, look at this dude too. Yeah. I mean, great battle scene is full of action right here too, man.
Well, that's a page of Thor where John Buscema inked himself.
Look at that. He did a great job.
Oh, he does.
Amazing work.
Very good. See again, John Buscema was an excellent choice on certain titles to follow Jack Kirby. Like John Buscema on Thor, he did an amazing job on Thor.
Yes, agreed. I mean, look at his rendition of a Submarine, and I see this looks crazy to me, bro. It's fire, son.
Oh yeah,
that looks more, you know.
Oh yeah, no, see, yeah,
right?
John
Powerful.
John Buscema's covers and short run on Submariner was fantastic.
Oh yes,
I mean, look at his covers, man.
Amazing.
Oh, look at that. Where's it? The thing right there. His rendition of the thing too is gorgeous too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow, I love these damn covers. These covers are fantastic from that time, using that realism with the, you know?
Yeah, just using photo. I mean, that was just a straight photo. I mean, wasn't the photo montage that Jack Kirby was doing.
Oh, absolutely. Look at that action sequence here.
Yeah.
Now, this dude is boss.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. This was from a 4-page color insert that I think it was issue 125 of the Fantastic Four, and it was the issue that they retold the origin of the Fantastic Four, but they gave this glossy 4-page insert of you know, basically the mixture of the Rogues Gallery, the Friends, people who are maybe, you know, not quite friends and foes over the years.
Yeah, right, you know, there.
The Hulk and Submariner have both been friends and foes to the Fantastic Four. You know.
Yeah, they have a bipolar relationship apparently with these guys.
They do.
You know, this is good. Yeah. I never liked this version of the Sandman, though. I tell you that much. I hated that suit.
Well, when it made him fit in with the Frightful Four.
Yeah, I understand the reasons why, but
yeah, but again, it's like
not my favorite
if you're a Sandman, you don't really need a costume.
No, you don't, man. But you know, you want to wear something. You don't want to feel naked out in the world, bro. Come on.
Well, you can. Yeah.
All right. So you know we're hitting the last of the. Wow, I can't believe we almost got it. So I'll stick it through. We should be finished momentarily, right? Because now we're digging into we're only 2 folders away. So we're digging into another legend, a boss that's still out there kicking butt, the one and only Señor Steranko. Oh, wow, bro. Look at that.
See, Jim's one of those guys who was a very unique person, and his approach, like his sense of design, his control over everything he drew at Marvel, like, you know, doing coloring, doing covers.
Wow,
Yeah, I mean, occasionally. Yeah, no. See, this is the original artwork for the cover. The actual cover that appeared had a redrawn face, I think, by John Romita. But yeah, no, you got to show the original. You know, it's again.
Look at this.
Yep. And this kind of clips in under the wire of what I'm saying about the 60s. Is this was like just at the time that Jack Kirby was about to leave Marvel to go over to DC Comics.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Wow, I love this issue. I love these issues.
Yeah. But again, such classic storytelling, design, composition. Yeah.
I mean, look at the storytelling here in the eyes, man.
Yeah.
And then here, oh man, look at that.
Yeah.
Just discussed this recently.
Yeah. I mean, this was from the black and white version from Vampire Tales, but the original was in color, but I just like seeing the black and white.
But Steranko also did the color guides for the color one, and they're amazing. The colors on that stories are amazing.
Yeah,
but they were upset with Satan in the 15th century.
Just to give you a preview about the story, how clever Steranko was. If you go back to the first page, these characters are introduced as Mary and Louis, and they go to the last page. They end up on the guillotine in the 18th century as Mary and Louis. Right. It's a very clever story. It's very intelligent. It's very intelligently built.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
But you see,
and of course,
yeah. See,
there's so much more to these stories. If you read them more than once, you will discover so much in there.
Hidden gems, absolutely.
Yeah. Now I have a poster of this cover, and there's only 4 in existence. And
really,
yeah, signed by Jim.
Wow. But look at that, man. Jim was a boss, bro. For real.
That's dynamic. Again, it's, you know, you can see what he took from Kirby in his approach and his art, but again, like making it if you wanted to say, well, who would be a perfect mix of, say, Neil Adams and Jack Kirby, it would probably be Jim Steranko, of that person who is far more realistic in his art than Jack Kirby, but not you know, to the extent that Neil Adams was.
Wow, look at the movement here, man.
Oh yeah.
And his cigars is still like smooth, bro.
Oh yeah, no, I'm very much Macho Man.
And what this reminds me of, you remember that movie Escape from New York, Snake Plissken?
Definitely.
That must have been inspired by this, bro. That's Snake Plissken.
Well, think about it. I mean, you know, it's like you could remake Escape from New York and just have it as a Nick Fury story.
Hell yeah, bro.
Definitely. But it's also, he completely redesigned the anatomy of Nick Fury. Steranko did.
Yeah.
This is not the Kirby. That's not the Kirby Steranko anymore. It's Kirby Fury anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, look at these beautiful contributions here. Look at the Black Widow. I think more as we know her now.
Yeah.
But was Steranko responsible for this version of the Black Widow coming?
No, that was John Romita.
Yeah.
That was John Romita.
Ooh, look at this.
This is Nick Fury.
That is Nick Fury. That's amazing. Nick Fury number 3 or 2, I'm not sure right now.
Wow, look at this. There's the poster right here. OT.
And this is a Nick Fury story. It's such an amazing story. It plays on the Hound of Baskerville, but it's very well done.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at that, go back a page. So if you, go back to that spread. So if you can see the way the story, like each of the words is a panel. So you've got someone running, and before they fall, and then go back again one more page. that's also, if you look at the graphic with again, there's another image. Again, you've got the person who's running is in the bottom of the image, but sort of hidden in the waves and there's in the mist. Yeah.
Hidden imagery.
Yeah.
Right here. Beautiful.
But I think when, on by the time he reached this issue, like, I think Jim was just looking at sort of different ways of how to tell stories. Like he really was playing with the medium.
He is. I mean, look at this angle of art here. Very confusing to kind of look at for a moment at a first look. Like, what's going on here? Yeah.
But then you realize it's the armor. It's the suit of armor that's falling. Yeah.
He does this so well, man.
Yeah. Oh, man, I could have included the entire story, but I didn't. And then this is this wonderful romance story.
But what do they mean by as narrated to, not by?
That was a joke. That was a joke they were running there.
I think it's basically as narrated to Stan Lee by Jim Steranko.
Beautiful.
But, I mean, yeah, the color, the art, stylistic. But again, this is Marvel. This is like, it's like, again, just to go back to the topic, can you imagine if the top creators were consistently kept on a small number of titles, and rather than expand, rather than keep sort of adding new titles, they just kept, say, a limited amount, but just kept them going and replaced them naturally when it actually came to the end of a lifespan of a certain group of characters. It would have completely changed the face of comics. And if they, again, it's the problem with publishing comics, particularly, and again, unfortunately, it's completely in the United States, is because at the end of the day, every company is controlled by an accountant.
Okay.
And it's not about keeping the quality up. It's not about, like keeping demand. Like if your sales are going to be higher, if there's a strong demand for it, i.e. you might have to wait for it. And that's Jim Steranko breaking a record there, doing a 4-page spread.
That was a record?
Well, it's a 4-page spread. It's basically that's 2 double-page spreads from.
So what you had to do is you had to buy 2 issues to put them next to each other.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Look at this. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. This man is a beast, bro. And this is an iconic cover because just this is kind of messes with.
Oh yeah, and a lot of people have done homages of their,
This is the classic. I mean, and if you look, he does look like David Hasselhoff, doesn't he?
Does he have a topic?
I think David Hasselhoff would be very happy with that comparison.
Yeah, he was the next Fury in one of those early movies.
Have you seen it? Have you seen that Fury movie?
You don't want to because you're gonna be furious.
I do have it.
Oh really, man? You spend money on that, bro?
No, no, I didn't spend. I didn't spend money on it.
Okay, it got gifted. All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's holding up that Wabi sofa of yours.
All right. That's it.
All right, and then I think right about now, I think this is the last spread from we got one more, Steranko, which is this from the X-Men.
Yeah, that's just he did a couple of issues of X-Men.
Very nice.
Again, beautifully done. But I think on a title that was, I think even Jim Steranko and Neil Adams couldn't save the X-Men at that period.
Oh, that's messed up.
No.
But that's why they took that break and kind of came back later on, right?
Yeah, well, it was. I think it was from 66 or issue 67 the reprint started.
Yeah,
and it stayed reprint for like 2-3 years.
Same, bro. But I mean, at least they kept it consistent, so that way, they didn't let the numbering die.
They didn't let the numbering die, and they didn't let the characters die, so they kept it going. Of course, it's reprint, so
Yeah.
All right, and then we get to the final presentation, final folder of this presentation, is where you dip it into the UK.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just I just wanted to this was a great way for Marvel to expand. I think the Mighty World of Marvel was a launch they made in the very early 1970s, and it was a great way for them to reach a completely new market. I was familiar with the characters, but when I bought this, it was my first reading of those very, very early stories. And the Mighty World of Marvel was like most British comics, was mostly black and white, a bit of two color in it. So, in the Spider-Man strip, he'd be, it was just black line with wherever he was red, there'd be some red. The Hulk was a bit of green, and the Fantastic Four had a little bit of blue in it, and that was kind of about it.
Wow, man! And what's this?
But it was weak. So Uncanny Tales was one of several titles that appeared throughout the 50s and 60s in the UK, reprinting American comics.
Okay.
So it wasn't like Uncanny Tales. Most of Uncanny Tales was usually sort of pre-superhero science fiction and horror stories and big monster stories, and not just from Marvel. They'd print stories from Charlton as well.
Gotcha.
But the way it worked, it was black and white, very cheap, and what they would do is they keep reprinting over the years. So the same issue would be reprinted maybe about 3 or 4 years later.
Gotcha.
The way the rights worked at that particular time was, instead of paying royalties and things like that, what the publishers did was they would buy the printing plates of the original publisher. And so those plates were shipped from America to the UK and used again because they were very strong. They're big metal plates, so they lasted. So you could tell how many, you could roughly tell how many times the strip had been reprinted, because if you had the same ones, you'd open it up and you could see the line was breaking down slowly over the years, until the point where the plates they couldn't use them anymore. They literally fell apart.
Damn.
But
and what's this?
Again, similar title by the same company. And again, as you can see here, they're reprinting Charlton's stories.
Yeah,
it was
Captain Universe.
Captain Atom. Yeah.
Captain Atom, sorry.
But the beauty was you were seeing it in black and white. So he was, and I would see it in black and white before I ever saw it in color. But you're seeing really nice, crisp black line, Steve Ditko black line artwork. So it was beautiful to see. So I just was adding that in. That's how they managed to expand their reach, make a little bit of money by doing foreign editions, but cheap foreign editions, to get the IP out, to get the stories out, and other markets to see them.
Wow, man, this has been very educational over here today,
very
guys.
Cool.
A lot of great information, bro. Thank you.
But again, but the main point was that I think that when Marvel really started pushing and growing its sales and putting more titles out and increasing the frequency of all its books, was probably when, on a general note, Marvel's sales started to drop. And I think if they'd stayed more boutique and expanded in other areas, so they could have had Marvel, but they could have then experimented with a horror line separate from Marvel, and done and when they had Conan, if they'd done that as a magazine straight away, so the Savage Sword of Conan, Vampire Tales, Dracula, Frankenstein as black and white magazines. Again, don't oversaturate, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, stuff like that. I think they would have, the quality would have stayed up. I mean, obviously, I don't think the company would have made as much money as it did.
Yeah.
But I think we'd be relishing, we'd still be looking back even more fondness with those characters. And maybe the characters might have died out by now. If you know, but we keep going back to the same well, and I think we need to dig some new wells.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Man, this has been fantastic today. I want to give a shout out to Rafiq for tuning in. Sixth Element, you know, again, I don't know if you guys noticed the message, but this is what Sixth Element thinks of us right now.
Cheers, man.
So cheers and love to everybody that tuned in. We're going to do this again in 2 weeks, okay? We're going to have another poll up on our YouTube, and we might even do like this split again. Those guys, shout out to Dave and Chris for putting together those images. All I did was just throw it into a PowerPoint, but they did all this fantastic research to give us this very educational and wonderful show today. So, guys, blessed. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I keep learning. You guys are like we said, all true OGs, man. Yeah, I love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you.
And Rafiq says, great stream. You know, shout out to Rafiq, man.
Thanks.
Gracias.
My pleasure.
All right. So we'll think about some new topics. We'll throw it onto the poll. All right. And please make sure to engage with us on International Comic Crusaders with ICC on CC on Twitter, or look at us up on Facebook, International Comics Crusaders. I mean, we're going to see Dave actually has been working on that page, sharing a lot of Chris's comic book confidential columns and more. Guys, again, if you have not read any of these columns, it's college. Sit down a Sunday afternoon. I mean, after I'm pretty sure a lot of people's football teams are not playing anymore. So who cares about that mess? Get educated right now. And Chris, do you want to give us a tease as to when we can anticipate the next entry?
Oh, we will have to wait a little while because I've already announced a new project.
Go ahead. You want to mention it?
No, I'm working on a horror novel at the moment.
You hear that, folks? Coming soon. We'll give you more information as we get more details from the one and only Buse. Dave, Chris, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Hasta la próxima. I'm Omega Huepa, para que tú sepas. It's Comic Crusaders, International Comic Crusaders. Make sure to shout out to my family too, Undercover Capes, all right? Much love.
Bye. Thanks for watching, guys.
Cheers, guys.